He is a distinguished public policy fellow. Yes. Very good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure, and I'm delighted to see this important conversation on powering India's GCC ecosystem being hosted here today. With a time when global business models are being reshaped, platforms like this bringing together the policy makers who are sitting up the days on the days, and also the industry leaders and experts, will play a very critical role in shaping India's next phase of growth. First of all, I must begin by saying a thankful note on my personal self and on behalf of Government of Telangana to the management of the Mahindra University and to my dear friend Mr. Padik for extending the invite for this program. I regret not being able to join you in person today. I have very much valued being part of this discussion, and I would like to, as part of engaging myself with you directly, but even from a long distance, it is encouraging to see the institutions like Mahindra University taking the lead in building such meaningful conversations. I want to recognize that the role of the Mahindra University and their keen part in playing in building the institution like yours, which are not only educating students and also building the talent backbone for our innovation ecosystem. I'm also happy to see the economy policy center that Mahindra University is taking charge. It really reflects the Hyderabad growing ambition to lead the global conversations like the policy framework and the innovation models and the entrepreneur journey. Since we have seen over the past at least 50 years that the gravity of the global economy lived in cities like New York, London, or in Hong Kong. If you have to build the future, you have to go there. To keeping in view of geopolitical and economic situation which has been shifting, while the great office towers of the West are seeing a historic silence, with nearly a quarter of their class sitting empty. Hyderabad is experiencing a very differential moment. Last year, while others were scaling back, Hyderabad absorbed about 11.4 million square feet on new office facilities. To put this in perspective, in just 12 months, Hyderabad added more office to PhD than all three, if you can combine, three Singapore's in one. And nearly half of this demand is driven by the global capability centers and also global value centers. This is not, I'm not speaking about the buildings on rent or race. It is about where the brain of the global economy has decided to live. For decades, the women India as a you point to safety. That is the low labor cost arbitrage, while the real work has happened elsewhere. That era is absolutely over. Hyderabad has become the global engine room. I would like to proudly say that Hyderabad is home to nearly 450 global capability centers, employing over 1 lakh high-end jobs. We have crossed about 3 lakh crore IT exports last financial year. This reflects not just about growth, but the increasing confidence of the global companies in this ecosystem. For example, if I say that the firms like Mahindra, the Hartford, the Goldman Sachs, which They've expanded their base here. They were not looking for the support system. They are looking for the ownership. And to all the thought leaders who are sitting over there, I would like to mention that this is a city where a life sciences researcher, aerospace engineer, or a generative AI developer operate within the same ecosystem. This creates what I call a global value center symphony. For example, if I can say, when artificial intelligence and the molecular RNA come together, you know, you just don't get a better pharmacy. I would like to mention here, you get a digital biology. And when fintech and cybersecurity come together, you don't just get a better bank. You get a sovereign financial field. When a global pharma company designs a new drug, or when a bank builds an AI first trading platform, they're not sending the work to Hyderabad. They are anchoring a value here. 7 out of 10 global leaders are now recognizing that to remain competitive in the next decade, their engine must be in India and that too in Hyderabad. We are no longer the alternative for the major companies here. We are becoming the center of gravity for those people. We are becoming the main core and fulcrum for their entrepreneurial balance. We are seeing the rise of what I call the boutique powerhouse. These are agile, five value firms from Europe and also from United States. You do not want massive factories. They want high-speed intelligence. Earlier, these companies have seen India as a complex, slow and distant. You know, the great leaders like you and the future leaders like you who invest their energy, time, their resources have literally changed now. Change that companies thinking which saw India as a complex, slow and distant. And they have totally changed the ecosystem. And Hyderabad is such a place where we have reframed it. And we have come to such a position that we can make anything happen over here. And we have created such a vibrant ecosystem in terms of creating infrastructure, in terms of creating the talent which is being required by all the industries. And through that, Hyderabad today has created a plug-and-play ecosystem. And we have thought about it, and we have made companies believe and also affirmed our role. Hyderabad is a universal hub. No matter where the company comes from, it can plug into Hyderabad and operate within the power of a global team. You know, through a Bharat Future City, what we are trying to build, we would like to build a larger world-class platform for the growth. Within it, we are developing a dedicated AI city, artificial intelligence city, a space designed for the world's most advanced companies. In the center of this, we have a plan to put it across to the global world, a center that is named as ICON. Think of ICON as a digital election, a safe AI backbone that gives you even the mid-sized firm the capability of the global leaders and the giant leaders. The government has been the frontline enabler through a GCC policy which we unveiled in 2024 is streamlined single window clearances targeted investments in our industry clusters and proactive skilling initiatives under previous IPAS framework. We have moved beyond being facilitators and now partners in building the capacity of the global leaders. We have not only moved our industrial output, we have shown to the world that we can conform to the world standards. Here, we are not only welcoming the large corporations anymore, we are enabling innovators, specialists, and emerging firms. Innovation, as everybody knows, is no longer restricted. It is now accessible to anyone with who has an ambition. If you have this vision, Hyderabad provides the engine. As I look at this gathering, I see the architects of this transformation over here. All the economists, the policymakers, and the industry leaders. While the world is seeing the infrastructure, it is your work. I mean to say, you all people who are the architects of this transformation, even as an economist, as a policymaker, or the industry leader, it is the work that is defining the system behind it. You're all the intellectual foundation of this growth. The world wants to come to India to save $1. Now it is coming back to India not to save $1, to secure their future. And Hyderabad has evolved itself to become a place for the future. The blueprint for the next century is no longer being written elsewhere. It is being showed right here in Hyderabad. I would like to really thank again the management of the Mahindra University and also the think tank for tomorrow's future, who will be the enablers for the Indian transformation and especially your state transformation, who are all sitting there, who will be sharing their ideas, who will be giving their input in terms of their intellectual capabilities. We would like to really welcome all you people over here to this beautiful city of Hyderabad and to the vibrant state of Telangana. Once again, extend all the best on this new initiative by the Mahindra University. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Good morning. We either had an option of that or a hologram. So we decided that we'll go with this. Uh, Nilanjan and I were worried, very worried yesterday because the inauguration of the Economic Policy Center also coincides with the crazy deadline that Trump gave Iran. so, so we were actually not sure what was going to happen, because the world, the entire world could have changed today morning. But luckily, maybe I don't want to say that because I may not get a visa next time. But things have been okay so far in the morning. So I'm glad that we are all here. First of all, thank you very much for everybody being here. We really appreciate, big hand and really, really appreciate all of you being here. Understand that it is a working day, so all the more reason for us to thank you. Uh, you know, uh, the whole purpose of the Economic Policy Center at Mahindra University. And thanks to our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Yash Meduri, our Dean, Dr. Anandi Pandey. The idea behind it is to really understand and dig deep
through research what are the drivers of policy and different dimensions of business, if we were to put it in one single sentence, right? It is based on the assumption that in today's world, where there are so many dynamic changes happening, we really want to understand multiple dimensions of how policy impacts strategy, how strategy impacts growth, and how eventually growth impacts the well being of human beings across the globe. That is the fundamental assumption behind it, right? So we would like to, first of all, welcome all the distinguished guests that are here today. The goal of today's program, making it very brief, but at the same time, the idea is we really want to have a good intellectual discussion on multiple dimensions of the GCC ecosystem in India. As simple as that. We have terrific panels lined up. I'll just give you a brief of the program. After this, we would love to do the lamp lighting and then a brief talk by our Vice Chancellor, our Dean, and then we'll take a quick break. We'll take a quick break for tea. And after that, the panels will start. And we have three different panels lined up with terrific speakers who are all sitting here, right? Panel one is about the macroeconomic factors. Panel two is about the Hyderabad ecosystem talent. And panel three is about strategy and coordination with headquarters. These are broadly how we have developed the topics. And that said, everybody sitting in the audience, feel free to ask questions because the whole point of today is to have a serious intellectual discussion, as I said, regarding multiple dimensions of the GCC ecosystem in India. So without much further ado, I would like to invite our Vice Chancellor to open the Economic Policy Center and deliver his address. Dr. Yaj Meduri. You want to do the lighting first? Okay. So please, please. Yeah, please, let's do the lighting. Amit, yeah. Yeah, come, come. It's just a lamp. No, no, no. We'll students keep doing all this stuff. Yes, yes, of course. Nilesh? Yeah. Oh, see, I, no, we do it. It's a group thing. I'd like to invite our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Yash Meduri, to deliver his address.
Good morning to all distinguished guests, my faculty colleagues, students, and business leaders. A very good morning to all of you. I think following Minister Sridhar Babu's interaction with us, I think I just got to make a couple of points only. And of course, I'll make these points because Dr. Banik has provided them to me. That's why. So I know it's all learned and stuff for me. That's right. So today marks a transformative moment for the Mahindra University. I think this is something which we've been looking for quite a long time, 8 years plus, and the School of Management started in 2021, and then it's grown. Of course, Pradeep and Nilanjan are some of the early entrants into the school with the inauguration of this Economic Policy Center, which will serve as our intellectual powerhouse, bridge the gap between theory and practice, and will create a platform where government officials, policymakers, industry reps, and academics can engage in rigorous discussion and research on pressing economic issues. Our goal is to develop policy frameworks that better serve the needs of businesses and industry, with events and programs centered on how policy can be shaped to strengthen the broader business environment. Mahindra University is uniquely positioned to deliver on this vision. And this is something, as I said, is rooted in our group's legacy of industry leadership and with cutting edge programs in engineering, management, humanities. We have both the expertise and intellectual depth to make a meaningful impact. And I urge everybody, look beyond the Indian School of Business. We are here also. Looking ahead, I expect the center to conduct path-breaking research on economic and managerial trends and to partner with, as I said before, policymakers, governments, and international bodies to influence real-world outcomes. Imagine a world of data-driven insights originating from the center, insights that guide the government's next policy initiative to shape policy papers defining India's development goals. It is not merely a center, I envision it as a catalyst for nation building. I do know my colleague, Dr. Banik, serves on many panels all across. If you look at his LinkedIn profile or whatever it is, every time in the month he's getting off to some country or the other. That's why. To our partners, I extend an open invitation. Let us co-create this impact together. To my colleagues out here, my best wishes in starting off this important initiative. Together, let us all ensure that India's economic story is one of inclusive prosperity. I have to thank the triumvirate of Nilanjan, Pradeep, and Anari who just put this together and look forward to many more such initiatives from the School of Management. Thank you, and let us open the doors tomorrow. Thank you very, very much.
So Nilanjan, you baked in a praise for yourself in your speech. That's pretty unusual, but yeah, I would love to invite my colleague, Dr. Nilanjan Banik. It's been a fabulous, experience building this whole economic policy center along with him. So without wasting too much time, Nilanjan, I would like to invite him to give a vision for what this center is all about and, what the mandate is and so on.
Thank you, Pradeep. In fact, I started my career as a journalist. The guy who's sitting there, Surajit, he was my first boss way back in 1997. And as a journalist, we were trained to get information, news that matters, right? And after dabbling in journalism for a few years, I got an opportunity to work with another stalwart, Vivek Debra, who passed away 2 years back. And I joined Rajiv Gandhi Foundation. And from writing a news report, the transformation came to writing research papers. But the thing continued to remain the same, which is, again, you have to look for some information or data, analyze data or information in a fashion which is bringing some value to the table, right? So that's how I started working with Vivek Debra for a couple of years. And then I thought that why not try to get a PhD? And that's how I went to the US. And even here, I found that the role of information matters. You know, in fact, I was exposed to this whole idea of information asymmetry, which is a subfield of microeconomics, something that we teach to our students. And what I found over there that depending upon how much information is there, it can alter the economic outcome. So let me give you two or three examples, and these are well-known examples. So, for instance, if I'm a car dealer, you know, as a seller of second-hand cars, the car dealers always have more information than the buyers, you know. So what happens is the buyers knows about this, that the sellers are trying to hide some information, in particular, maybe not that great thing about the cars, and therefore the buyers are always going to charge or quote a lesser price. So what eventually happens on the bad quality cars that get sold in the market. So this is the famous uh, market for lemon, which is some of my economist friends will know about this. It was propounded by an economist named George Akerlof, who got Nobel Prize for this in the year 2001.
Now, we can actually extend this idea of information asymmetry in many other domains. For instance, even here when we are working, when we were hired, there was some kind of expectation from us that we are going to bring this and that in the table, right? But once we get a job, we might shy away from the responsibilities with which the very first place we were hired for, you know. So that's a typical model hazard problem. Even when we are doing this program on GCC, each one of us has got some specific information. We are good in some information. For instance, I have my friend from the GST Commissionerate. He has got more information about the tax, how tax is going to influence the GCC outcome. We have economist friend who has more information about what theory actually works better for running any business. We have business leaders who are more equipped trying to understand that as opposed to the theory land, what matters more are the practical know-hows. You know, so when we are talking about this center, the whole idea was, can we create a platform where this information flows pretty much freely? Because in case of asymmetric information, what matters is the economic outcome is always suboptimal. For instance, that I gave you for the market for labor, you're not getting access to the better quality cars. Even in the insurance market we are talking about, as a seller of insurance product, you don't know what kind of disease the buyer might have got, you know, and therefore you start charging premium, you know. So whenever there is a problem with the information asymmetry, the economic outcome is not optimal. And therefore, we thought that in terms of the centers that we are going to open, why not create a platform where we get this diverse group of individuals from variety of economic domain, be it policymakers, be it government officials, be it industry leaders, or be it economists or policymakers, who can sit together, try to give out information for the betterment of the economy and betterment of the that particular business we are talking about. So that is the broad idea, and it has got lots of, in terms of demand, lots of industry leaders are looking for this kind of activities. For instance, I've been already been approached by FISMI to do the next round of talk centered around the marginal and small enterprises because they also have lots of issues which they want to be heard to the government. You know, so our objective is going forward with support from our vice chancellor and our team. We'd like to conduct these high-profile events, events which matters, event through which we can influence the policy-making decisions of the government and help the industry to grow and eventually make any particular state or for that matter district to grow fast. That has been the objective, and we think that this is quite niche in the area that we are trying to work. And I think going forward, we are going to do a good job. Thank you very much for your time and supporting us in this endeavor. Thank you. Now, may I request our dean to say a few words, please.
Thank you, Nilanjan. And on the behalf of the School of Management, Mahindra University, I have the privilege of welcoming honorable esteemed guests who are here and the honorable Vice Chancellor, uh, and other business leaders, colleagues and students. It's a privilege to be part of this initiative, which is our journey, a step forward in achieving excellence. And I must compliment Professor Nilanjan and Professor Pradeep for conceptualizing and executing it, and the time that they've taken between the two events is very short, which means that they have deep executive capability, which will undoubtedly ensure that there is significant progress to report. So a couple of questions, and I'm not going to take too much time between the next event and what I have to say, but I thought through. And being a professor of strategy, you will excuse me my intelligence because the word policy in eastern part of the world means strategy. Right? So if you go to Japan and the companies there talk of not strategic management, they talk of policy making. You know, the policy in that context is a firm level strategy. But having said that, why economic policy center? I don't think the gravitas of such a center in an emerging economy can be overstated. So, when we teach theories of institutions, we realize that what makes markets and makes them function well and efficiently are the institutions. And one of the critical things that is missing in emerging economies is the efficiency of institution. And what is this institution? One of the elements of institution is the regulatory tool, right? It makes markets. And why is making markets efficient important? Because there is one entity called businesses, and we have business leaders here. These businesses are the only entity in any economy that creates value. And then that value gets distributed amongst consumers, amongst providers of capital, amongst resource providers, and the entire economy grows. Yeah? So regulatory frameworks are the frameworks that shape frictionless transaction between the businesses and the various entities and markets that they deal with, including the capital markets, the resource markets, the product markets. Let me give you an example, then I close. In the mid part of the previous decade, about a decade back, the housing sector in India collapsed. And the reason it collapsed, like the problem that Nilanjan talked about, lemon problem, was because investors like me who wanted to buy a house gave out money to unscrupulous real estate guys, and they diverted that money into projects that went dead. So our money was lost, and the houses that we aspired to get never came into being. Now, what did it do to the economy? The housing sector collapsed. There were people like me who had money in the bank, who needed a house, and there were these real estate companies that they were willing to engage labor, employ them, and deliver houses, but the twain never met because I would never trust a house real estate agent. Why wouldn't I trust him? Because the regulatory framework to protect me was missing. And then came the government of India. It created an act called RERA to the real estate sector because it cast responsibility on the providers of houses to create an escrow account through which I, as an investor, can also have control, and the real estate can't invest more than it has to invest 80% of my contribution in the house that they have to deliver. Now, that is the protection I get, and therefore I trust the supplier, and therefore the transactions happen, and therefore the economy grows, right? So, therefore, the Economic Policy Center, its objective is to engage with industry and policymakers. And we look forward to it being a great knowledge hub where research-oriented, initiatives and dialogues can guide the evolution of policy so that emerging economies like India can rub, shoulders with the developed world, which is our aspiration of a Viksit Bharat. With those few words and wishing Nilanjan and team and everybody here a great thank you for being present and a great success. Look forward to a wonderful center. Good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey, Dr. Yash. So we'll take a quick tea break. Oh, yeah, one photo session. Yeah, sorry. Take a quick photo and then quick tea break and then come back and get into the thick of our discussions. Yeah, first photo session. Yes. Please come. Oh, so we'll stand there so that the photographer can stand on the stage and take pictures. Rajesh, quick, stand. Surajit, please. Come down, please. No, you are the guests. Guests first. And why and then written one with copy. Yeah, I think. You okay now? Yeah. We'll take a quick tea break and come back in 15, 20 minutes and kickstart our panels. Please join us for tea. I request the guests to settle down so that we can start the first panel. Yes. We have. Put it there. So welcome back. Are we getting more students? One, please. So this is a very important session in the sense that, it kind of echo the reason why we have this center. I have with me a very distinguished sets of panelists, starting with Rumki Mazumdar, who is in the Macro Advisory Board, also Chief Economist of Deloitte India. I have with me Surajit Gupta, who is a Senior Editor with Times of India. I have with me Professor Amirullah Khan, who is with the Telangana State Public Service Commission as a member, also visiting professors, God knows how many universities, both in India and outside India. And of course, I have with me another dear friend, Mr. Jagdish. He is Customs and Revenue Service Officer, IRS, I think 2014 batch right now, 2014 batch. And what we were discussing in the very first session, that each one of us are specializing in certain activities, right? So therefore, each one of us are going to bring to the table a diverse uh, type of information. And our objective is, I have been after them over the last 1 week, at least to give 500 words write-up so that we can come out with a white paper, which we can eventually circulate with the people who matters. So I'm not going to waste time, and I'd like to make this more in a dialogue mode rather than a monologue. So let's start with you first, Rumpi, because GCC, just what information which I have over here, GCC is basically most of the multinationals. So some of the students are sitting here. Uh, to tell you in a very simple way, most of the multinationals, they are now setting up their offices in India because of this mercurial President Trump. We are having lots of problems with the trades. Trade is with tariff. You have been hearing more or less every day what he's doing with the tariff part, but also with the services. So rather than, and India is a very important market, right? Because we have the technological know-how. We have one of the largest numbers of STEM graduates. So in terms of the inputs needed for the foreign multinationals, we are here. So therefore, rather than Muhammad or rather than mountain coming to Muhammad, in this case, we are seeing Muhammad is going to the mountain. We are seeing all the multinationals, they are setting up their offices in India. And right now, I think the latest numbers suggest around 1,800 GCC centers are there, right? And each one of this uh, are contributing to the local ecosystem in terms of their growth and also generating income, as well as for the young students over here, it might be a very good opportunity for them to get some internship positions, right? So my question to Rumpi would be, and she's been working more or less on the economy, macroeconomy in general. So what do you think is how much GCC is contributing to the urbanization, right? And what are the expectations from the government, state government, in terms of
Because in terms of economics, it can be both ways. GCCs are coming because you have good infrastructure in place. The other way can be because GCCs are coming, government is also spending more money. So if you can throw some light as to in what way GCC is going to impact the overall growth, in particular the urbanization of any particular sector. As you know that unlike China, unlike some of the developed countries, our centers for development are very much concentrated, which is not that a great thing. So can you just give some idea in what way GCC is going to help the growth, more particularly the uniform way of growing? Yeah.
First of all, I would like to thank Mahindra University for inviting me here today and giving me this opportunity to speak to you all. Thank you, Dr. Niranjan, for inviting me. Now, coming to your question, our story evolved when services sector took off. And why? Two reasons. One, we had a low cost advantage, labor, and we had English speaking skills. That is what exactly US was looking at because they needed someone to get the job done and whom they can communicate with. They needed a back office. And India just had everything to be served on plate. That's how the journey started. But the journey started for those states who moved early. If you look at why Bangalore became the IT hub, because in early 2000, of course, it was born in Bangalore. But the fact that the ecosystem developed really quickly, be it policy initiatives, be it infrastructure. Of course, I cannot claim infrastructure is good enough right now, but the fact that it became a 360-degree system that could help the US MNCs to come and build here. That's when once the benefits started showing up, because the rapidity with which money has grown, no other city has. That's when other states realized that this is a very, very um, um, a sector which should be tapped into, and that's when many other states also jumped into. But what's happened is once the ecosystem is built, it is like a magnet. Pulls everything towards itself, leaving very few towards the others. And if you're not moving quickly, you lose out. That's what happens is where Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi, Bangalore became the magnet hub for all IT. Even the many other states are trying to build up, trying to build up there, but concentration remain here because it's not just MNCs. Even basic infrastructure requirement people do have make them come here. I'll give you an example. Our organization is working with UP government. They want to build that as one of the hub. Now, when you ask a question who's just graduated, who's in 20s, and I ask, if we give you a choice to be in Bangalore or Lucknow, what would you choose? What would you choose? Why not Lucknow? They have fantastic culture. The city is now really growing. Food is excellent.
But we need some.
I'm sorry. I realized we might go there. The generation is aspirational. They want hubs. They want boarding schools. Which so these are some of the factors which makes a city attractive to many others, which is not there. And that's what people don't realize that these are small pieces that makes it a whole. But today, that realization is coming. In the last 5 years, MNCs have realized that the concentration is not helping. Bangalore moving from point A to point B is a pain. Costs are going up. People are tired. They do not want to commute, but still they have to go to offices. So what next? I think what happened post COVID was work from home became some of the concept one could play around with. And that's when many of the other states like cities like Bhubaneswar, Cochin, they realized this is a time to tap into and bring that that the attraction towards those cities. And they made those small initiatives which made those GCCs go there because cost advantage is like 30%. People are aspirational. If you go to Bhopal, you would see Mercedes and BMWs flying there. You won't expect. That means they have the purchasing power. There is aspiration. Why not tap into that? So that's where and GCC have realized that you can get things delivered anywhere. Nobody in the US wants to know whether you're sitting in Bangalore or Pune or Bhopal or anywhere, or maybe in the Himalayas. Just have the right internet connection, have power. That's it. You're done. And that's what many of the other cities are now playing on. And that's what GCCs are also tapping into. In our organization, they they realize that build on your business on MSMEs because the volume is so huge, so they can scale up so quickly. They will bring a lot of business.
So let me tap into one of the aspects that you mentioned. So GCC started off with as a cost arbitrage, right? We are talking about the low cost uh, economy being in India. But are we also talking about the value proposition? For instance, the critics argue that, okay, we are manufacturing Apple iPhone, but in terms of value addition, we are not contributing that much. And therefore, and why it is important is, in terms of return to the neighbors, it's not going to reflect that great returns, right? So are we seeing the same kind of thing, although we have people from the GSC leaders over here, but are we also kind of seeing that kind of thing being shaping up in the GCC as well, where you are actually focusing on the process rather than focusing on innovation?
Even we should have done this much earlier because automation and AI were there. It's just took shape and form after 2022, after ChatGPT came in. But we knew it was coming, and moving up the value chain was inevitable. We knew it, and we have to do it now. We are already late in the game. But the question is, when you're saying, are we value adding? We have to. We have no option right now. Because see, GCCs have two possibilities: run or transform. Clearly, AI can do the run part of it. They can run any business. If it is automated, they can do the job. Where it requires a little bit of human skill is where it will need to think strategically or transform. That is where your margin starts improving, and that's where you move up the value chain. And I think we are doing a pretty decent job there because a lot of innovation centers, ER&Ds, analytical centers have been built here. Uh, Bosch has their R&D center. Merck has their R&D centers here. So clearly, all of it is happening, but we really need to scale up there because that's where growth is going to be. That's where you have future. Everything else will get automated.
Thank you, Raman. So, Vijita, you have been a veteran journalist and you are driving various information which we as common men might not have. But what Rumki was kind of suggesting is in GCC, you just need internet connection, power connection. I don't care too much about the law and order situation. I don't care whether my roads are filled up with potholes or not. And yet, what we see in terms of the geographical spread of GCCs in India, it is kind of concentrated in few states, right? So almost, if I understand correctly, Gujarat, Telangana, then you have Bangalore. So Maharashtra, few such states almost contribute out of that 1,800 numbers that we are talking about. 80% of the GCC concentration are in these few states. So because what she says, it's not about the infrastructure, which might impact my trade in goods, but we are talking about services. So how come we still have this thing being concentrated only in few states as opposed to others?
So, first of all, thank you, Nilanjan. Thank you, Mahindra University, and all the senior members for inviting me. For those of you who might be wondering what a journalist is doing in this panel, uh, let me tell you that since 1991, I had the great privilege of covering uh, the big policy decisions in this country. Uh, uh, so I spent most of my life in the corridors of North Block, and I have been fortunate enough to interview most of the finance ministers and key policymakers. So with that, let me come back to your question. So you see,
95% of the GCCs are concentrated in a few cities, mostly the southern cities. And now Delhi, NCR, Pune, they're trying to do that. But let me also tell you that 6% of the new GCCs which were launched last year, 2024, were in the places like Ranchi, Lucknow, uh, all these cities. Why? Because there is a concentration risk here as well when we are talking about it, and there are limits to the capability of the infrastructure to cope with this kind of thing. Rumpi is from Bangalore, and she knows the traffic situation there. So yes, digitally enabled services is very easy to do that. But when you shift certain operations, you shift professionals, you shift officers, you need that ecosystem to develop, which perfectly ties in with the decongestion of cities like big cities. So if you have because these tier two, tier three towns have a ready pool of talent, uh, but then policies have to come from those state governments where they can encourage these entities which want to come there and create that ecosystem, in terms of better cities.
So are you kind of suggesting it's because of the difference in policy that the states governments are rolling out?
Absolutely.
Versus
It is function of policy as well,
okay.
but also in terms of infrastructure and services that you can provide. Imagine a CEO from Atlanta coming to work in say Bhopal. So you have to create that kind of ecosystem which serves his needs. Schools, hospitals, uh, connectivity is fabulous these days, but there are this entire ecosystem has to be developed. Uh, Also, in terms of regulation, because if I can show you a chart, uh, there's this is a report on GCC by CII, and it shows the number of stakeholders. Just see the number of stakeholders. So you need, light touch regulation. You need coordination, and so it's the whole, you know, combination of policies that will ensure that you have a stable system, and you don't end up
So
burdening
basically,
the sector.
so basically, you are suggesting that the tier two and tier three cities should develop their infrastructure in such a fashion so that I can kind of compare with the tier one cities.
Absolutely.
And one of the problem with the government is right now what we are seeing is uh, that's a different topic altogether. But the government is spending more times to and money to giving freebies, and of course that has got a political implication. And not that much of resources are getting diverted towards the infrastructure. And we are yet in a very interesting stage where we find, at least the data shows, since 2017, private capital expansion from the private sector. It's not growing. But this is a fantastic space where you can have public-private partnership in terms of developing the required infrastructure because the government is not spending that much money in terms of delivering those public infrastructure.
Yeah.
So do you have any?
You see, I mean, the government has been doing the heavy lifting since COVID,
Right.
and there are limits to how much can be done. And you have uncertainties. You have oil shocks like the one we have. The fiscal space gets limited. So, with this compulsion, the government has done enough to, encourage the private sector to invest. Why they're not investing is a different question that we can debate about. But the fact that the private sector has a role, and they can profit from it if they build cities, if they build the kind of infrastructure that these kind of services need. So it's in their interest. So I guess a combination of public-private partnership should be the way forward in developing the infrastructure that we need to with these GCCs.
Okay, so let me come to Amir. You have been with the government and you have been also an academic for donkeys here. You have been doing some good research as well. One of the things that both the panels just now mentioned is in order to create a hub for GCC, you also need the supply of inputs, which in this case would be skilled labors. Because we have been hearing that people who are working with the GCC, they are, I'm not going to diverge, but some of their salary they are drawing would tell us what we are doing here. So, so, so just to get an understanding, because we also have the students, what kind of skill that you think, because you are also with the Telangana Public Service Commission, that is required, maybe from the perspective of our universities, that we can train them so that they can have an entry to the system.
Thanks, Nilanjan. You know, it's um, it's fascinating to discuss this issue and with all of you. I'm assuming that the left is students and the right is faculty. But to all of you. And I'd like to start with asking you a few questions. Hmm? Have you ever wondered why you joined the Mahindra?
Yeah, don't be shy.
You don't have to answer, but answer it to yourself. Why is Mahindra University situated in Hyderabad? Why would somebody come and set up a GCC or a BPO, whatever, in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Gurgaon, um, India, Philippines? Here's you know a case study for you. You are setting up a GCC, right? Or you are setting up an office. You want the best people. You want the cheapest people. Why would you set up your office in India? Or why would you set it up in Ireland or Greece? Why wouldn't you set it up in the cheapest place on the planet? Why not in Congo or Benin, Mali, if cost were rich? In India, why this horribly, terrible city of Gurgaon? I ran away from there. Or with an AQI of 900 and whatever. Why would you go there? Why are you not setting up your facility in Sitamarhi? Does anyone here know where Sitamarhi? But why not there? And look at Telangana. Why Hyderabad? 40 years ago, the Hyderabad industry, IT and BPO came up. Why is there no single facility in Warangal? You can cycle to Warangal. If you're a cyclist like me, you can. I do that. But you can cycle to Warangal. There is no facility in Manchuria, in Kagasnagar. So, for students, this is an interesting question to look at. Why are locational preferences such that everybody wants to be in the same city? And you know what? Within the same city, everybody wants to be in Hachipadu. Why? It's a horrible place. But the rest of Hyderabad is open and half an hour away you have field. Why would you do that? So there is a lot of literature, economics literature on this locational issue. And it points out that there are several other
I mean, just to
and not just cost. Yeah.
it's a very interesting point he is raising. But aren't there some spillover effect? Let's say if Hyderabad is growing,
Yeah.
it will have some spillover on the neighboring.
That's the first question I asked.
Yeah.
Right? Why Mahindra University? Why is Mahindra University in Hyderabad? Is Mahindra in Hyderabad because Gachibowli in Hyderabad is in Hyderabad? Or is Gachibowli in Hyderabad because Mahindra University is in? That's the possibility. Did people come to Hyderabad because Hyderabad had some of the finest educational institutions already? Did pharma come to Hyderabad because we already had a IDPL? Did electronics come to Hyderabad because ECIL and BHEL were set up here 100 years ago? So that's the question for you to ponder, and that will explain to you why you would not set up um, your facility in Azamgarh. or in Ayodhya or Allahabad or whatever the new name of that city. So that's one. So the point I'm getting at is that if I were to give you a horrible place, which is very cheap, free of cost, I tell you that here you can set up your unit in this part of Uttarakhand, right, or Haryana, where I will give you free land and I will give you a tax holiday for 10 years. Right? But there is no university in sight. I set up a university in a God-forsaken place called Saharanpur and tried my best to get faculty. Um, so will you set up university? Will you set up your unit in Saharan, in Muzaffarnagar? I'm giving you free land and a tax holiday. Or will you set it up in Mysore, where you have four of the best universities in Karnataka? And that's the human resource part. You see, in the service sector, particularly in the service sector, what matters is people like you. What matters is graduates like you. What matters is institutions like Mahindra, which will teach young students what it means to work in a modern environment, which will teach you what Mokir and Agion, COVID, familiar name, they got the Nobel Prize this year for economics. What did they say? They said that there are certain places that harness, foster knowledge. Hmm? Why is it that enlightenment came to Europe? Why did industrial revolution happen in Northern Europe? Why didn't it happen in Croatia or Romania, China or India? It could have happened anywhere. So they trace that and they say that there are places, there are people, there are institutions, and there are policies that foster what they call as propositional knowledge and prescribed knowledge. What universities like Mahindra do, and I'm talking about this purely from what I know of what is happening here, is this delightful mix between what scientific understanding is and how then can that knowledge be converted into practical knowledge. That's the kind of people we want. That's the kind of people we are willing to pay 10 lakhs for to reveal his secret. He didn't want to say it. Right? But that's the kind of people we want you to be. If we were to put you into a place where we tell you, do not question, don't ask this question, don't stick to tradition. Our historical culture is great. All our answers will come from 3,000 years ago. Then you're of no use to a modern, innovative, technological planet. Now you understand why people will prefer Telangana to you.
No, we kind of understand that. But again, just to have one additional question, because as a student of economics, we have been trying to put this balance versus unbalanced growth. Now, what you're kind of suggesting is you create an ecosystem. It's more like everything is there in place, and it will organically grow. But at the same time, if I took into account India's growth process, it was primarily or predominantly driven by the services sector. It's as if one sector with lots of both forward and backward linkages is able to deliver. So are you suggesting that even in the context of GCC, we are looking more towards balanced type growth as opposed to having like some sparkle out there, which will actually pull the rest of the economy?
Thanks for asking that question. That's really at the core of what I want to say. It's really at the core of what the entire motive work on innovation has been and COVID both. What they say, and this is important to all of you as students and all of you as faculty, what motive makes a very big point about is that economic growth is not guaranteed. You know, we have the world's largest middle class. We have 65% of India is between 15 and 49. No, that is not a guarantee for growth. That can be. If you think that that will lead us to being the fastest growing economy in the world, sorry. That you have a large number of students at the university does not mean that you will grow. Like you get faculty in from the best institutions, that doesn't mean that. What it means is that innovation climate has to be there. That ability to use, to develop sustained useful knowledge, not sporadic useless knowledge. That's the distinction that Asimoglu also made. Sustained useful knowledge that constantly questions what exists. That's really very important. It's that ability to build a workforce, or build a future workforce, which is going to question the very basis of what innovation means. And that's what a GCC, that's what these multinationals want from institutions, that they want to set up thousands of miles away. Not cost. Who is bothered about? All of us who teach accounting and economics know that the that whole sad thing of fixed costs and so on is a very old issue. People are not so worried about cost anymore, and we are marginal costs in any case. See, if you are paying somebody a $10,000, it really doesn't matter, given that you are going to produce the next Tesla. That's what matters. And that's going to produce $1 billion. So therefore, it is the focus is there, and that's what explains to you, even in India, why you have such uh, heterogeneous development, and why Telangana, from being a sleepy, we grew up in a Telangana that was brown, that was barren, that was pretty hostile, that had communal riots happening every 2 years. That's how we grew. That was Telangana, the poor state. 13 of our districts were the poorest districts in the country when we formed the state. Today, it is the highest per capita income state. Today, it is a green state. Today, it has five crop cycles from one, for a tropical, for an arid place. And that is because what we were able to do was sustain that change.
So one last question, because we might be also giving some time, is you talked about innovation, and yet you find, at least the data show, both Rumki and Sudhika is there, uh, Indian government spending, or for that matter, corporate sector spending on R&D is only 0.7% of GDP. So for innovation, how much important is for the education system or the university system like ours? Because in the US, most of us went there because we got some grant from National Foundation, which is basically industry is giving some money on the basis of which we can do our PhD. Do you think we have evolved to that stage where the private university system like Mahindra can take a role to maybe spur innovation?
I feel like a slumdog millionaire. Because, I wrote this in the Economic Times yesterday, um, about the role that private universities play in sustaining India. Send it off to you. Look at the innovation that happens across the world, that has happened across. Just take a look at COVID. Where did the vaccine come from? It came from the Oxford University. Why doesn't it come from a university in India? Why does it have to come from, Cyrus, allow them, flexes his muscles and sends it off, and we don't get vaccines and all of that. So therefore, the burden is on us. Really, the responsibility is on us in this room. Uh, we can keep blaming everything else and everybody else, but innovation. What else are we here for? If we if it is not to set up economic policy center, if it is not to get innovative ideas, if it is not to provide solutions to people, to state, to industry, to organizations, then what else are we doing? So, and you see, that is the core from where every every innovation, every industrial revolution takes. It was the universities, it were the training institutions in England, in Italy, in Germany, and in the US that provided technological solutions. The last point that I want to make here is that, yes, it goes without saying that we need more money in people. 0.5, 0.7% is simply not enough. But far more important than the allocation to research and development is the climate funds. Are you able to ask me a question? Do you have the ability to do things that potentially will fail? Will Mahindra allow you to set up an pointless economic policy? What do you do in an economic policy? And I have some poor fellows come and talk. And
That's a big.
yeah, but to somebody who's evaluating it, to a dean who's evaluating it, waste of time and money, you better spend time teaching. Does it allow you to? It allows you to do that. If that culture, that academic culture in our country allows us to do that, then we will have more disease.
Good. Okay. So now we have the tax man. The question is what Amir was suggesting in the sense that even if I give tax holidays, for instance, for the benefit of the audience here, India had some so-called tax reforms, right? We used to be in the range of 32% or 31%. Then it came down to, I still remember, I was watching the television, all of a sudden, Nirmala auntie came and said that 25%. And the stock market 10%, bazooka. And we also have another tax bracket for the newly opened companies, right? So, from the perspective, although I know Professor Pradeep is going to moderate some microstations, but from the perspective, because we also have the people from the GCC, what incentive the government is doing, in particular the Indian government, when it comes to the tax ecosystem?
First of all, I would like to say thanks to Dr. Malik for inviting me. It's very surprising that we do a lot of outreach programs in terms of taxation, but it is first time I'm meeting academia. Unlike we only meet the taxpayers, I'm seeing the other side of the world. And I'm quite happy that I'm co-chairing with none other than Professor Khan, who's an honorable member of Telangana Public Service Commission, very senior former civil servant and development economist. And I'd like to tell you something that in the month of October, we were in ISB, and now that we have reached middle level management of the government of India, we were sent to 21 days management training in ISB. Sir is our mentor for 21 days. And the last session was, we came and attended personally. Otherwise, he was guiding us how to write papers, which generally doesn't happen in government service. Because day in, day out, you are happy with the brown files seeing on your tables. So the last thing that Professor Khan said was he just wanted to tingle that a kind of a, to write, to research, to go. That is one word I like from your last section, sir. So I was just after that, I presented a paper on green tax. I know what are the loopholes there Professor Khan has identified, and I know what to cover up and what not. It's a very big, he gave us a challenge in 7 days to write a very big paper. But that actually triggered some kind of academic interest in me.
Okay. Which
Sir, 7 days means ChatGPT on. And I would say about Mr. Banik also, first time as a UPSC student, you are actually forced or trained to read standard books. But Professor Banik took one class in economics, so he was looking at the budget data. Excel, he downloaded Excels before us, and he was trying to see the percentage impact of private capital formation or the government GCFCs or PCFCs that he was comparing the ratios. I just loved his class. So coming to the main discussion, the question was, what is the incentives to GCCs to run in India? If you look at the corporate tax in Poland is 19%. Malaysia tax is at 24%. And if you look at some of the Middle East, Far East nations, tax is at 25%. As you rightly said, in 2019, we came out with a change where tax was like 33 to 35%. We brought it down to 25%. Effectively 22 plus surcharge plus cess, it amounts to 25.17%. Now, being from a global perspective, with 25% tax, and there are certain developed economies in Europe which might have a lower tax rates, will we be able to attract better talent to India? Will we be able to establish GCs in India? Keeping view of this, to keep our corporate sector in terms of competition to other countries, Government of India now it brought to 25%. I'm sure is definitely competitive rate. The second aspect
Actually, these provisions were brought under Section 1115. We were all the way from April 1. We have a new act, Income Tax Act 2025. For almost 62, 63 years, we came out with a new law. And these provisions were slightly different. Previously, for example, transfer pricing, which starts at typically Section 92, now it is placed at Section 121. So pardon me if I'm quoting old sections, but it is just 8 days old, the new act is. So the second aspect that was brought under Section 1115 of the previous act is if a new manufacturing setup is being brought in, the effective tax rate is only 15%. I'm sure 15%, when you look at the global tax rates, I'm sure Indian manufacturing setup has a better competitive edge for the simple reason that from GST perspective, we allow them to encash the input tax credit when they are exporting the goods.
But how much time it takes to get the input tax credit back?
So Section 54 of CGST Act says 60 days, but there was a change brought in the month of October 2025 when we have a risk parameters. Whenever a risk assessment of particular taxpayer is minimal, there is a law brought in which says that 90% of the refund can be granted in 7 days. And the balance 10% after thorough scrutiny can be granted within 60 days. And any refund which is sanctioned after 60 days, interest comes into picture. So with this kind of if you look at the government is actually listening. Even you look at the transfer pricing changes that are being brought in, government is very closely listening. I'll give you one example. There is a concept called the safe harbor rules. What it says is basically if you are a GCC and you're supplying some kind of services to a parent company in US, let us suppose X Limited India Limited is supplying some services to your parent company which is in US. Since it is your parent company, taxman always wants your transactions to be fair. So just because he's your parent, you cannot charge him less or you cannot charge him more, which is called basically transfer pricing. And the government wants it to be an arm's length pricing. It means, for example, if people are unrelated, how do you charge? For example, I'll give you how taxman comes into the picture. You did some service to your parent company and you bill your parent company for $1 million. So you file your returns. Suddenly, taxman can actually probe 6 years back. He will come and say, see, similar kind of a service, similar kind of a setup, they charge 1.5 million. So, but you charge only 1 million to your parent company. It means you have actually underreported your tax liability. So now what I'll do is I'll revise your tax liability to $1.5 million, your invoice value. Now I'll charge income tax on that. Generally at lower end GCCs, they charge cost plus some margins. I'll give what is this I'll tell you a concept. For example, you are a budding GCC in India, and you just started. You are providing very basic service like providing payroll help, providing basic invoicing help to your US parent company. You can't charge too much for your parent company. You basically charge your cost plus some profit, which we call cost plus margin concept. As you grow and you become a bigger organization, now let us suppose you are employing 2,000 people or 1,000 people, you are let us suppose you are doing phenomenal innovation research and you are getting some patents out of it. See, you cannot charge cost plus margin. You have to reap some kind of benefit from your innovations. What you do typically is, let us suppose $1 million you are making out of your innovation. You say that, okay, and I did innovation, at least 40% of this 1 million should ascribe to me. I will only share 60% to my company. So if you look at, that is where the taxman will come. So whether you are charging correctly or not. The CFR rules says that government in the budget 2026, previously the transaction limit, the entire threshold limit was 300 crores. Now that has been enhanced to 2,000 crores. As long as your threshold is 2,000 crores, we will say, let us suppose you are into ITES services, information technology enabled services. I will say that, okay, if you are operating in ITES services, you can have a profit margin or operating profit to the tune of 15.5%.
So is it kind of similar to when we do consulting income? Let's say we only declare 50%. Then we are not under the tax compliance because the remaining 50% we can say that cost. Is it something similar? Yeah.
Basically, what Professor Manik was asking is there are two sections in Income Tax Act. Probably I'm talking more about income tax. There's a concept called presental taxation. Okay. There are two sections, 44 AD and 44 ADA. 44 AD is typically for professionals. If you're a doctor or IT consultant, what the law says, if you're handling everything in check, you're taking more than 95% of your income in check, 75 lakhs is the limit. So up to 75 lakhs, we will not say you don't maintain books of accounts. You simply say that your taxable income is only 50%. So effectively, Sir Banik might get 75 lakh rupees as consultancy income. But from if you file income tax under 44 AD, you say that 50% I assume as mine. I don't want to maintain books of accounts. Sir, it is actually, if you see, sir, if I draw analogy, the safe harbor means pertaining to the same GCC, same thing, the same analogy, presumptive. I'll presume that 15.5% is off. As long as you within the band, sir, I don't get into your scrutiny, your books of accounts. Otherwise, what happens? You just cross the, you say suddenly say that my operating profit is 35%. You either make your parent company trouble or yourself trouble because you are declaring more income. So again, taxman scrutiny will come into picture. So he has asked a very beautiful question. I was also thinking from the morning that this is all present to, because if you look at government wants to provide some kind of certainty. In the 500 votes paper that I have submitted to Mr. Banik, I even recommended one recommendation that if you look at the bigger GCCs, their turnover must be going into 10,000 crores. Now, government has come in, that threshold limit is 2,000 crores. I have recommended it that it should be enhanced to 5,000 crores. The logic is that if there is a tax issue beyond 2,000 crores, they end up going to advanced uh, mechanism where they go to a taxman and say, let us have a contract between us for 5 years. See, you decide how much rate you should pay, and I will honor it. So that is binding on both the parties. Similar kind of concepts are there in you know GST and customs also. See, for example, I will tell you one more analogy of what happens in GCC. I'll tell you. Let us suppose you're a GCC and you wanted to import from your Amazon parent company, Amazon GCC in India. And if you are importing some IT related material, some big servers or whatever computers you wanted to import, now I'll see what is the price that you have adopted, whether you are actually quoting less or actually quoting more. So to handle these kind of special issues, we have a concept called Special Valuation Branch, SVB, which is located in bigger cities in India. They look at this tax aspect, whether arm's length pricing has been adopted or not. So we look at the past data, we see similar kind of a item, whether any other company has imported at what price. We have this database called NIDB, National Import Database, National Export Database. The government has huge custodian of data. You look at income tax, collects data from 40 different organizations. They have an MOU. Of course, we also collect DSTN collects, CBIC collects, CBDD collects. So we are sitting on huge information. We have a lot of data. So coming back to what Professor Panik has asked, yes, we are very competitive at 22 and 15% rate. Second is government is clearly listening. The proof is that safe harbor rules. I mean, that is in tune with the what is the requirement from the corporate side.
Thank you. I think this is the essence of this platform because what we just now have heard, the kind of information we have got, even I as a professor never knew about it. So, and the same is true for each one of us. We are, yeah, this is in a way kind of, it's a kind of eye-opening, and this I think is going to create value. So, because we are almost out of time, let me ask if you have any
Sir,
questions.
if you permit me, I would like to interact with 2 minutes with the student.
Yes.
See, I give you a typical scenario how you should think. Actually, I would like to extend what Professor Khan said. Typically, what happens? Why only bigger places? Why not smaller places? It's very sad. I would like to answer the question. Let us suppose you wanted to set up a GCC in India. There is a concept called secondment in Income Tax Act, It means a senior person in US will come here and he will ensure that the proper setup is made in India. Now, the, the question is, if you wanted to set up, you have to be very smart in how to recognize your initial days expenditures. You need a land, you need, you're hiring a rental place, and you need to pay salaries for initial employees, or you need hardware infrastructure. So how do you recognize this in the books of accounts? Transport pricing is the most litigated topic in direct taxes. There is a survey conducted by KPMG and NASCOM. 81% of the respondents said it is what makes them poor. Suddenly, IT guy will come and say, you pay 300% tax. But here, you imagine to draft a particular contract between your parent company and Indian company, you need a good legal mind to recognize your transactions, how much to be charged without impacting, without ensuring the taxman comes into your doorbell. How do you draft your contracts? At the same time, beyond all these things, you have to run the show. You need technical guys running the company. So it means that right from it's an entire supply chain of human minds. So that generally happens in a bigger city. You don't find a smart lawyer sitting in a small place drafting beautiful contracts for you. That is where a unification of mind comes. So that is where actually students should keep thinking, what is your intrinsic value as a student? What is your value in the market? As a student, can you actually draft? Can you actually solve a mathematical problem, tax problem? See, we are looking at the service aspect. If you look at the manufacturing, see many now the recently, when you look at the GCC literature, there are so many pharma companies bringing their GCCs here. That has a different forte to it. We are looking at only service sector, but if you look at other areas of being their R&Ds here, then do you have the core competency to handle? Do you acquire required skill? Upskilling is very required. Whether you do it sitting in Hyderabad, as Madam Gompi said, whether you sit here, whether you sit in Bhopal, it doesn't matter. That upskilling is required. You need beautiful minds to handle your contracts, handle your payroll system, handle your tax matters. If that is there, I'm sure tier two cities will just, gallop with investments like anything. Thank you.
So let's try to. Do we have a student volunteer to take around the mic? So raise your hand if you have any question. Yeah, I think one says it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vansh. So I had a question for Amit sir. So we all know about the Telangana government and the innovation ecosystem they've set up with many policies to attract MNCs, GCCs, etc. My question is, how can state policy balance aggressive incentives to attract GCCs while keeping in mind the need to support local MSMEs, startups, and domestic ecosystems as well?
Yeah, thanks, Vansh. For those of you who have seen initiatives like T-Works and T-Hub, you will understand the context behind that question. Um, you know, any work done on this, and there has been some work done on this in various geographies across the world. We haven't done too much in Nilanjan, and that's something we should take up. You will find that that locational preferences have very little to do with those freebies that Nilanjan talked about. You can give free land. Himachal tried giving free land, and Gujarat did, and UP does, and Bihar does, but nobody goes there. Uh, it's far more important to provide the intellectual space, to provide good people, right? That point that it's so important that you need a lawyer. I mean, where do you get a lawyer? If you don't have a lawyer, how do you start? If you don't have somebody who understands the tax system and understands this sometimes complicated 40%, 50%, and 35% of 70%, then you can't go there. So as far as state policy is concerned, and Karnataka and Telangana are great examples of that, that the reason these two states benefited disproportionately from the technological revolution moving to India was because of a set of sustained steps. That I go back to that welfare thing, and it's not one policy or one step at a time. It is sustained steps. So to give you a background, you see 50 years ago, these two states, and you can think, Think about it. Those of you who have some political science interest, why were there two states in India that decided in the 70s that higher education in engineering should be in the private sector? Nobody else did. All education in India was state, right? It was a state monopoly. Why did Karnataka and Andhra decide to set up private engineering college? And look at its impact in 2020. So that's just one example, but series of that, the Factories Act, the Shops and Establishments Act, the various issues that these states took up on a very sustained and a very systematic manner that enables this environment. I'm still not very happy, right? You've still not done enough. Look at Telangana. We still have a huge problem. We still have infrastructural problems. We still don't have enough electricity go half an hour away from company. So there is still a problem. I'm still very unhappy that 1800 GCCs in India. Why 1800? Why isn't every company in India? Why should there be any firm existing in the US? It should have been 18,000 by now.
Just that quickly, South Korea and India almost have similar per capita income way back in 1960s. The only difference, which something what Abid was trying to say, is South Korea invested more on primary education, yeah, and we are now doing practice there. Right? Yeah.
See, we have to accept the fact that the government of India has limited resources. If it takes out somewhere and putting somewhere else, somebody is getting deprived. That trade-off will always be there. The question is, from an economic lens, where is the multiplier working the best? In some states, GCC's multiplier has worked best. In some states, putting in manufacturing has worked better. That's where you have to probably see where you have to do the trade-off. What ecosystem is building it faster, and then go with it. Right. But that doesn't mean that you leave out on the other. But always, I mean, learning from other countries, learning from other experiences, learning from the mistakes others have done, and then pick up those pieces. For example, when you say South Korea, China and India had the same GDP in 1990, 30 years. Today, we are struggling to get to 5 trillion. They're already 19 trillion for the economy. Manufacturing work. But today, if I say manufacturing will work for India as well, may not. Because manufacturing is not the same manufacturing what it used to be in 90s. So it's all about how you, I mean, that's why you have, and again, resource constraint will always be there for India. We are not a rich country. Trade-offs have to be made.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have a question for Amir sir. So you were mentioning that GCC. Oh, my name is Snigdha. So you were mentioning that GCCs choose places with a lot of student ecosystem concentration. Like you took that example that if Madras has 4 universities, then I would want to start something there. But also, what is it that makes that student population really valuable? And also, I've read about some of your work. You are building institutions in places like Saharanpur. So, what does it take for regions like Saharanpur to evolve into economic hubs?
My goodness. Thank you. The first question is the easier one. The second one is tough. Um, what kind of students, what kind of education are we looking at? Or in other words, what do we expect from you? When I sit and interview you, then what am I looking at? Am I looking at the knowledge you've obtained at the university? Am I looking at how quickly you can, calculate various things that Jagdish talked about? Am I looking at, the various econometric models that you've learned here? The answer is no, because that I get from your mark sheet. That you graduated means that you have these. I am looking at whether that transformation is possible within you. Can you use that prescribed knowledge that has been imparted to you? Can you use that to become useful one? which means that do you have that scientific basis, that epistemic base, or that epistemological base that these chaps talk about, which is the ability to question, the ability to think solutions, and you know what? The ability to make mistakes. That are you willing? And where will it come from? It will come from the culture that you evolved from. Has your university been gracious enough, been magnanimous enough to help you question? Can you go up there and ask and tell Nilanjan that what he's been teaching in the class was wrong? Right? Can you go out there and do experiments which can fail? And can you then show that to us when I'm interviewing? So that climate is the scientific climate that we need. And very importantly, are you able to, as Schumpeter famously said, are you able to destroy that what exists? Or are you caught up in legacy? If you are caught up in legacy, you will never, if you hadn't thrown away our old telephones, you would never be speaking on mobile. If you hadn't thrown away our typewriters, you wouldn't have been working on tablet. You have to dispense with legacy. Unfortunately, we as a society, and I'm talking of we as a society, have become so didactic in what we do. Everything is there with us. Everything is good about us. Everything is nice about us. We are the greatest people. Really? Have you ever heard an American academic say that Trump is a great guy, or Biden, or Carter? No. You're always questioning institutions. If the government is done enough, no, the government is not done enough. That is why we are here in this situation. We have to have the strength to take responsibility. Why? We have to take the responsibility that we haven't produced great students. We haven't produced great research. Why haven't we given the answers to this already? I don't, if I tell you, go out there and find a paper that tells you why Saharanpur is in a hopeless situation. Have I done that work? No. Can I answer your second question? The second question is that, if you take that belt, that Western UP belt, it's a very strange place. It's a very contrasting place. Per capita income starts high, right? And every other indicator is poor. Look at Telangana itself, $4,800 per capita income. We are like Greece, right? In PPP terms. But go 100 kilometers, and you will see the worst data on stunting, on female literacy, on wasting, on access to hospitals in the same state, which is the highest per capita state in the country. Now, should I sit here and say we as a government have done enough? No, we haven't done enough. We've failed horribly. As governments, it is never the half full glass. You're always responsible for the half empty. And my God, our glass is half empty. So, what happened in Saharanpur, Muzaffarnagar, Muradabad, all of that? Rich belts, high per capita incomes, terrible health indicators, awful education indicator, huge amount of dropout, some of the most abysmal gender divides in the country, where people still kill their daughters after they are born. Still, 2026, a daughter is born, you kill her. With that, it is very difficult to transform us happen. But we have to. And that's why some of us went there, fought it out. It's been a tough, we are just as old as Mahindra University, the local university in Saharan. But the contrast is this.
I think you got your answer. So thank you very much. It's been a very enriching discussion, at least for me, as well as hopefully for you guys. May I ask our dean to do the honor, because benefited from them so much here. I think uh, souvenirs. Ah,
Thank you, panelists. It was a wonderful discussion. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you, panelists. Next group is a heavyweight group. I would like to invite Mr. Simmer, Senior Partner at KPMG GCC. Big hand for him. Then Mr. Amit Verma, Country Head at Sidco Group. Unfortunately, Mr. Venugopal Reddy's father passed away, so he couldn't join us just 2 days ago. Mr. Amjad Khan, Amjad, yeah, please. Center Head for Bosch Global Software. Amjad has been so gracious. He just came back from Vietnam, but then still made it to the talk. Yeah. It was not an average weight. So if you can all settle down, if you can all settle down. Well, welcome to the panel, first of all. Thank you so much for coming. I understand the effort. I had that conversation in the morning. So I emotionally blackmailed him to come over. So I can totally understand. And you're all very busy. As I said, the goal is to have an open discussion on various topics that are of importance to GCC and Hyderabad. And for this particular panel, we will focus on two important topics. One is the overall ecosystem and the innovation ecosystem in Hyderabad and surrounding areas. And the second one is related to a little bit of strategy as well as talent management, which are serious issues, I'm pretty sure, for all of you sitting on the dais right now. So I'd like to start off by asking your opinion, maybe a 2 to 3 minute opinion on, let's say, one of the topics, and then we can have a freewheeling discussion, subsequently opening up to the audience in terms of questions. So the first question I have for all of you is, how are you plugging into the overall ecosystem of Hyderabad, and what are some of the gaps that you see that all the stakeholders together can build it together. Simmer, if you can start with you can take that mic. Yeah.
So, thank you. Very interesting conversation. In fact, last or 2 weeks back, I was on a panel where we were talking about the fact that should you work with the ecosystem or should you develop your own ecosystem? Because a lot of GCCs historically have been very siloed. You do whatever you do within your world without really talking to the outside. And that trend has significantly changed over the last 5, 7, 10 years, where everyone has started to realize that you need the external ecosystem, both education, both industry, and the innovation ecosystem, just to be able to drive and be able to thrive with whatever changes are happening. And the pace of change is becoming absolutely breathtaking. So for them to be able to do this within the banking side of the world, which I've throughout my life I've been in the banking side of the world, and the conversation within banking always has been banking has not yet been impacted. Life will happen, but for banks, you will still have to go to a bank. You will still need to go to a bank to get the money and all of it. It might be the worst possible experience that you have, but the bank will still be a bank. It's like going to a dentist. But I think now is the time when the banking, so to say, is starting to get disrupted. And most banks have realized that if they don't do anything, status quo is not an option anymore. Because of that, working with the ecosystem, working together in a wider piece is critical. Within the BFSI world, specifically to Hyderabad, we had put together a consortium called BFSI Consortium, which is a group of industry leaders who got together and said, let's work with the government, let's work with the educational ecosystem, because for the GCCs to thrive and for all of us to thrive well, we need to have a common pool. And this effectively got started during COVID. There was a great resignation phase. Everyone was getting paid obnoxious amount of salaries because I would hire from Amit and Amit would hire from Amjad, Amjad would hire from someone else. The same person had 5 different offers. The same person was going around, and suddenly everything was getting inflated. Everyone was running and chasing the same talent. People were moonlighting. There were all possible things happening, but had no control around it. So 4, 5 of us friends got together and said, "Hey, let's build a, a if nothing else, a gentleman's agreement to say if I get a candidate who's saying I already have an offer from State Street or Wells Fargo, I will say, okay, please continue with it. I will go to a different candidate. So HSBC, Wells, State Street, JP, UBS, so 4, 5 of us had put that together. And over the last 5 years, what has happened is that ecosystem has become such a big driving force with regards to talent that they work with the government and put together a minor degree program in banking and finance and insurance. So kids who are graduating as a part of their graduate degree are no longer just graduating in a BCom, but they're doing a minor degree in one of the banking topics or subjects, or even in technology are learning banking technology. So kids who are coming out are not coming out raw for all practical purposes, but are ready for employment. And some of that batch, it starts with the third semester per se. The industry is involved in putting together training, content, subject, what is the industry requirement, so that candidates who graduate from a college are not raw graduates. Because on one hand, we say we have a huge pool of population that is coming out of colleges every year. But when you talk to the industry, you also hear the same answer to say we lack talent. We don't have the right talent. We don't have people who understand the right business problems. Or like Amir was saying, are people really questioning status quo? Because if they don't question status quo, there is a problem. So having T-Hub available, having that ecosystem available, and having a government that is encouraging participation or supporting the entire ecosystem clearly definitely helps.
Fabulous. Amit, your perspective?
Yeah, sir. I think I'll first tell about our organization, right? Because I come from a very different organization. You wouldn't have heard about Citco. We are world's largest alternative asset administrator. So what you mean by alternative assets is we actually administer almost 25% of the global hedge funds and private equity funds across the world. And in India, and it's interesting that we are in India, we have 5,000 people in India, 5,000, mostly accountants and MBAs, financiers who we hire to do this entire accounting over there. So very different mix of work that we do here, and I can actually compare and contrast the entire ecosystem because we have sites in Mumbai and Pune also versus Hyderabad and how the ecosystem helps there. So obviously, Hyderabad is the largest center for us. We have almost 2,500 people, which has grown in the past 3-4 years. We started in 22 in Hyderabad, so we have been in Mumbai since 2017. It took us 5 years to come to Hyderabad, and now Hyderabad is the largest. And of course, some of the things that has actually helped us is, of course, the favorable government policy that we talked. Of course, talent availability is another thing. I think what is happening, what we see particularly about Hyderabad being a pull for the talent is people prefer coming to it. Like one of the things that we do, all the positions that we advertise or we hire people for, we give people the preference of which site they want to go, right? Because we have offices across all the three cities. We have seen more and more people actually opting to come to Hyderabad and settle in because of the quality of life that they actually are expecting. I think still infrastructure, still I will say, because I'm not very boastful about how the infrastructure of Hyderabad is developing, but so far the infrastructure works, right? Like, one of the big problems that we see in Pune was almost comparable. Mumbai is in a different league altogether. Pune was much comparable, but then on the infrastructure side, Pune has lost the battle pretty well. Like, it's no longer, the infrastructure has never catered to the GCC expansion that has been happening. While here, government kept on working on it. Government has been working. Although now, somewhere it seems, and when you go toward the high tech city and all that, it is somewhere losing or slipping down. But yeah, the new locations are coming up, and it's actually growing further. I think for new hires that we have seen, more and more people are opting for Hyderabad because still, despite it's getting costlier. We hear about the cost of living going up, but still it's actually cheaper than the other locations. Things work for them. It's also conducive. I think the overall environment also, socially also, Hyderabad is a much more pleasant place to come to compared to the other cities. So that works. As the GCC, it helps us because the government is very friendly. The government, right from the single window clearance that they implemented 10 years back, and they have been going ahead with that. Whether you talk about the law and order, we have a security council where all the companies come together with the police commissioner of high tech city, and there are monthly meetings happening. We get alerts on the traffics and all those things. These are very smaller things that the government is doing, but something which is not happening across other sites. So that kind of adds on to it, right? And of course, the last is the talent availability. It has always been there. Earlier, it was always whenever you talked about Hyderabad, it was about technology, right? Because we have so many engineering colleges, we have so many technology institutes, and so you can get talent. But now you talk about any sector, right? So, and you can see it in the GCC also coming in. It's not no longer limited to technology. It's also about financial services. It's also about pharmaceuticals that everyone is coming. And I think it's a mix of everything. BFSI consortium, as we said, the industry panel and all those things that are also getting together. And so all that actually creates a very homogeneous mix where we can operate and thrive.
Awesome. Thank you. Just a small variation of the question. One is the GCC is plugging into the existing ecosystem. And the other one is now developing that ecosystem so that you're not just, a recipient, but also you're contributing to the ecosystem, right? From that perspective, what are companies, what are GCCs doing? What are you doing?
So yes, adding to the perspectives, I mean, ecosystem for a company like Bosch, we struggle within our own company first because $90 billion company with 4.5 lakh people, a lot of business units. Um, it is much tougher to connect to the external ecosystem. And when I moved in 2024 to Hyderabad, um, the question was, people never used to ask me, what do you do? They say I'm just Bosch spark plug, washing machine. I said, boss, some of the things we are not even making. We are the software and system engineering company for Bosch and off Bosch, which generates close to a couple of billion revenue from India. Two things I would like to mention. One, um, from the ecosystem, I think it's not an option. So last year I had a thought of a virtual platform. Coming from mobility, we have to validate because of safety, functional safety reasons on a physical hardware. But now the mandates are also given to do it virtually. Then we figured out, despite being one of the topmost companies, tier one companies in automotive, we can't do it alone. So I started brainstorming what is that? Who are the other players, right? I mean, because we bring certain expertise with respect to performance cloud, security, mobility domain. But then you need OEMs. We have like Stellantis, Hyundai. You need semiconductor companies like Qualcomm, NXP. You need players who develop the toolkits. Either it is IPG, Synopsys, so at least I give you a stack picture where it was impossible for Bosch alone to develop the system. We started discussion with Qualcomm, with QNX BlackBerry. So it's progressing well. Yeah, it's not about is Bosch going to sell something to them or they are going to sell. It's a win-win situation.
Correct.
So create those platforms. That's one example. The second, almost every second week, we host GCCs coming to Hyderabad because we have been one of the oldest GCCs. We entered India in 1922.
Right.
1922. Yeah, of course, we bought Micro in 1950s. So today, every company comes, either the US company or German company. So they come and want to learn. So it also is our responsibility to tell why Hyderabad. So being an Hyderabadi, stayed in Germany, have been involved almost 20 years. So I proudly present what is Hyderabad known for. I mean, skilling perfectly fine infra once you get down from the airport coming to Gachibowli, Rayagurg area. That's an amazing experience. But then the really value add comes, how close are we connected? They make it a point. And we have also a very strong ER&D group uh, connecting to all the product engineering companies. So whenever we have senior executives, for us, it's just one day to just say, can we meet either at your office or our office or over coffee tea? So we get 10 to 12 people. And then we share the experiences across. So I did this recently 2 weeks ago with my CEO who has come from Bangalore. I do it also when people come from Germany. With CII, the Green Business Center in Madhapur. So each meeting is you said, this is something we don't get it in Bangalore. Look, this is a hard fact. We bump in, Bipin is not here, Rajesh is not here. We bump in every week somewhere or the other. Yeah. So this is what the ecosystem offers. This is what we have to leverage, and we are basically the ambassadors, how to bring all of them together. Yeah.
In fact, you made a good point. So I just want to dwell on that. Uh, I was having a conversation with a GCC leader recently. I won't name my first language. And she had a very interesting, let's say, statement because she runs a GCC, which is both in Bangalore as well as Hyderabad. And she says for young talent, Hyderabad is becoming the hub. But anything about middle and senior, Bangalore is still the place to be in terms of location. Maybe it's her perspective. It's a BFSI this thing. What do you think? Why is that? Is it just a question of time, or is it something that each location is or each city is doing, which is creating this kind of a dichotomy? So, Simar, if I can get a perspective on that, and
See, while I understand someone's perspective about having two centers, both in Bangalore and Hyderabad, if I go back 10, 12 years ago, the Hyderabad center was not seen to be the more fancier center in comparison to Bangalore. More high-end work was happening out of Bangalore. Analytics was happening out of Bangalore. Product engineering was happening out of Bangalore. While Hyderabad was doing more support roles. I was in HSBC where we had offices in both locations. And when I moved from Hyderabad to Bangalore, my first reaction was, while Hyderabad might uh, be headquarters for us, the real IP, the front office, the research work, the analytics work, product engineering work was happening out of Bangalore rather than happening out of Hyderabad. That said, over the last 5 years, the new companies that have the new GCCs that are coming in, the scale of change that is happening within the landscape of the market. I don't think today there is a difference between the quantity of work or quality of work that is happening between the two locations. Is mature setup. So, as an example, HSBC has 14, 15,000 people in Bangalore. I have 12,000 people in Hyderabad. Today, the work mix is more or less the same between both the locations. So, roles, senior roles, etc., that diversity is definitely there. Just looking at HSBC, there are more MD roles that are sitting out of Bangalore than they're sitting out of IT.
Right.
Uh, that said, the same is between Goldman Sachs. Both offices, both locations. When Hyderabad was set up, it was set up as a very small satellite center for the main center for Bangalore. Over a period of time, last 5 years, they've significantly grown their Hyderabad center. There are definitely more MDs based out of Bangalore than they are out of Hyderabad, but that's a matter of time. It's a matter of time where things are changing and things are moving. So I would not say that the senior roles don't have capacity in Hyderabad, or Hyderabad does not offer enough senior roles for talent. Uh, that said, I'm involved with lots of new GCCs that are coming into the market, and practically every GCC conversation is I will definitely have to have a location in Hyderabad as one location. It could be my first location or my second location. And I will also possibly need to be in Bangalore or Chennai or Pune, depending on what they need to do. So Hyderabad is definitely a common thread across for the last 5 or 6 big, large banks that have come into the country. Um, the other piece that I like to say, there are some very specific niche roles which might require domain and product and some pieces. That talent is less available in Hyderabad, or those roles are less available in Hyderabad today in comparison to Bangalore. That said, for most GCCs, that role is 1% of what you need to build. So getting that 1% talent in Hyderabad, is that possible? It is absolutely possible.
Fantastic. Amit, your perspective on that particular comment, and on leading on that, is it something that cities are doing to differentiate themselves, or is it that just a matter of time before these ecosystems just develop automatically?
Yeah, I think well, I was listening about this Hyderabad versus Bangalore thing. So again, the thing is that yeah, that's a common thread that we hear. But my own take is, and I have worked in Bangalore long back. I think Bangalore had that advantage of starting early, right? When Hyderabad was not even in the picture, Bangalore was there. Like when we talk about investment banking, also the first investment banking operation center was set up in Bangalore way back in 2002 when Deutsche Bank decided to move there, right? And then JP Morgan's and all. So Hyderabad, they came much later. And that's where the evolution thing is. And that's when a senior guy says that for senior people, it makes more sense to be in Bangalore. Maybe they were talking about opportunities for them rather than anything else.
Right.
But it's just a matter of time. Hyderabad is scaling up in a much faster rate and it will actually reach there. So that shouldn't be an issue, and I don't see an issue. And I think what she talked about, the younger talent, obviously Hyderabad still has a better quality of life and also cheaper compared to Bangalore. So that kind of helps.
Fantastic. So that would be a segue to the follow-up question for Amjad. We'll start there. Uh, you are on as GCCs. You're competing with product companies, IT companies, because so much of this work is so similar if you think about it, right? What are GCCs doing differently to retain talent so that you are still able to hold them, train them, and them adding value? It's not just a revolving door between different types of companies. Any specific things that you're doing from your perspective or in general? See some innovative practices.
So I think so. This has been a challenge not only in the AI times but also pre-AI times. So how do you retain talent? So especially the tech experts or domain experts. So first problem statement was how do you show a growing career path for tech guys? So we used to say people managers who manage people typically they are the ones who grow, right? I mean, first level, second level, third level. The tech guy, how does it grow? So we had a programs called Cool Colors. So we divided it into three career paths. We said we put it into talent to lead people I mean, talent acquisition, talent training, etc. Then we have program management, as in career path. We have literally tech people as a career path where they can go up to an executive vice president level. So that was not visible. That we a lot of time in telling that how can you grow and what are the handholding areas. And this is the same question even our headquarters ask. So we invest a lot of effort in training India for that matter. And so after a certain time, we lose them. We don't have them, right? So how do you do that? So the second thing, what we always try to do perfectly now is ownership, right? I mean, just building as extended workbench or taking a component responsibility was not sufficient. So our guys always needed a challenge so that they don't tend to look outside. I mean, of course, while exiting, they always tell because of salary or because of manager they are exiting. But uh, I think the truth lies somewhere different. So we got a lot of ownerships, especially the experts who work on eye level with our headquarters Germany. We took the platform ownership from here, playing global roles. For example, the AI transformation in Bosch world is led by a program guy sitting in Bangalore. Yeah. So it means all the business units. So that guy was responsible with our team saving last year close to $40 million. And now this year we are targeting to save $100 million with efficiency. So this kind of global goals, where you lead from India, I think that's a real input for them to stay back as a talent. I mean, of course, you should give them a career path, how they can go, right? I mean, it's not only the tech talent or program guys, as I said. So these are two examples. Maybe there are many more examples in other GCCs. How to
Love to hear from Amit and Simar. How are you competing for talent? Because it's such a fluid thing now, right? And you're competing with so many different types of industries, not just GCCs as such. So, what is your secret sauce? Let's say.
So 20 years ago, we used to say there are service companies, there are GCC, there are product companies, and there's consulting. I think that value chain has significantly been disrupted. In product companies, people end up working on one product or one part of a small piece of a product. In a GCC, and there are all kinds of GCCs, frankly. In a GCC, they could be working on not just one product, but multiple products. They could be working on transforming the entire piece together. Um, we gave examples of global roles being driven out of Bosch. There are examples where Novartis has global programs being run out of global clinical trials being run out of Hyderabad for all practical purposes. For HSBC, mobile banking, the mobile app for 63 countries is a big global program that has been driven out of the GCC here in India, and completely from conceptualization to execution for the next 5 years will be run driven out of the place. So that experience is phenomenal. And talent today is actually not so money is definitely one component, type of work is one component, etc. But most, in my experience, most talent is looking for what is the future? Are they working on the real challenges? Are they actually solving a problem? And most GCCs, especially GCCs who started, become capability centers, not just like transactional centers. They are actually really solving bigger global problems. So it's a it's a motivator in itself for them.
And your answer, plus that's also what Simar said as a good segue to the next question, which is my wife also works in a GCC. So every day I have to hear at least half an hour of her ranting about headquarters versus, you know where I'm going with that. So, and obviously she also says the same thing, which is that her talent leaves not because of money or facilities or anything, but because they don't have a bigger perspective, right? Them working on challenging products and all that stuff. So how does that happen? In the sense that how do you negotiate with headquarters so that you, as the Indian leaders, bring more strategic work to India and not what like Simar is saying, just transactional slash back end kind of work? And how does that impact your retention slash hiring strategies?
I think I look all the talent thing that Simas already said, both of them, about how we are attracting talent. One of the things that I wanted to kind of say, this GCC terminology itself is nothing, right? Like, frankly, when we run our firms, we are not saying or we are not being categorized in the organization that we are running GCC. For example, in SIPCO, India is the largest center. We have 5,000 people out of 15,000 sitting here. So one third of their population sits here. We don't distinguish between, like, SIPCO Hyderabad is no different than SIPCO New York or SIPCO London. People get transferred across. The work teams are the global vertical teams, and they have, in fact, we tell everyone when they are actually inducted that you'll be part of the team where most likely you are doing very well if, and within 3 years, your manager is not sitting next to you, he's sitting somewhere else in another office. So that's the gradual way it is happening, and this just happens by time, right? Like, as the process is mature, it's a maturity part is actually playing a bigger role. I think GCC and all, and that's why I see somewhere at least people who are not in this industry, they confuse GCC with the low-end BPOs, what used to be run by service companies. So let's first make it very clear, GCCs are no longer BPOs, right? BPOs was something where it was being outsourced to service companies, very clearly playing on the manpower and arbitrage that the companies were offering. The GCCs that are being set up in Hyderabad, we are calling it as GCCs, but they are nothing GCCs. These are different offices of different firms being set up here, doing exactly the same job that they are doing there. In fact, the career path that we can offer to people is also that they are not limited to India or they are not limited to the work they are doing. They can actually be transferred out. We keep on processing people. We keep on moving people also in between. And that's another thing. So like my fund accounting MD, who is based out of Hyderabad right now, he has been transferred from Canada. So it's not that it's one-way street where Indians can get opportunity overseas. Overseas people also came in. So that assimilation kind of creates a global organization. And anyone who's joining a GCC at this point of time is joining the global organization that he's part of, whether it be Bosch, whether it be KPMG, whether it be us. It's the part of the global organization. It's no longer, and there's no categorization in any of the firms that, okay, you are working in India, so you are GCC, and you're working in local office, so you are something. Yes, the difference is there, and the ramp that you talked about, that is mostly comes in because in the Western companies, they are sitting closer to the clients and they are client facing. Part of it comes because of the tax also that we talked about. We can't do client facing jobs because the tax changes and the entire model changes. But other than that, there's no differentiation. And I think that that's how we negotiate. One of the things is that obviously as we scale up, as we are larger, as we are getting older, like Bosch already talked about it, we gain strength there, right? Our numbers, our strength, our work force that is there, you can't ignore it. You can't no longer ignore your India center. And our work speaks for ourselves, right? Like, as you are actually, you mature in the work. Obviously, when people are sending something which is thousands of miles away, which they can't see, they can't talk on a regular basis, they can't monitor on a regular basis. So that is something that always that hitch will be there when they start with it. But as we start delivering from our side, they you know they become comfortable and more work keeps on starting coming in. One of the things that we do from our perspective as the leaders is we try to do the proof of concept works always. So anything new that is coming in, any new project is happening and all, or any client migration is coming in, let's do small work, show them how we can actually deliver it, and then ask for more work from them. So that's how we are trying.
It was like a startup mode, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's being innovative and startup. So it's a startup mode kind of thing that we can talk about.
Yeah.
But of course, one of the things is that also gets into the governance piece, how your teams are structured. If you have created a India-centric organization where everyone reports into someone in India, then you are creating a kind of a service feeder organization which speed service. If you have created the vertical organizations where your teams in turn are team part of a larger vertical teams and reports into somewhere else, then the ownership also comes in more strongly, and then they are more reliant to give work.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think having lived my life in the GCC and evolved my life in the GCC, I can relate to your wife's ranting about this is not happening, that is not happening. So let's not hide the fact there is a disconnect between what the global organization would like with what the employee on the ground will do. or can do or should do. And I believe the biggest issue there is context. Uh, an employee sitting in a location in India 5,000 miles away versus employee sitting in Hong Kong or US has a different context to what work they're doing. And yeah, execution is important, but if I'm executing without context, if I'm executing just because I was given this job to do and I'm completing this job, I'm not thinking left or right, then I will continue to rant to say, hey, I could have done better, but I've not earned the right to be able to do better. While someone sitting in Hong Kong or you also might just be a transactional operator, and that person will not grow. That person will not get the right context. But under normal circumstances, the probability of that context getting right is higher propensity in an onshore location than it is in an offshore location if the ecosystem is not developed, if the organization structure is not developed, if how you're positioned within the organization is not developed. So some of those things I think make a big difference. We used to joke like standard requirement within the UBS setup for us was you have to earn the right to be able to take that bigger ownership. You need to deliver what you went to do. And but after that, you need to get down to owning that process. Once you own that process, then you need to own the KPIs or control points within that process for the organization to understand that you can now start transforming that process. But arriving in tomorrow and saying, hey, I'm here, let me transform this process, hand over this entire thing to me, while I don't understand what alternative investment is, how does that make a difference? Why does this entry make a big difference to the wider firm? That context is missing in most cases. So some of that, as long as that gets fixed within the organization, you will see the organizations thrive and create ecosystems of or microcosm of the wider organization.
Yeah, take Amjad. Yeah. Yeah. So just thinking about the context, right? So I've been an expat now in India. So I belong to Germany. So people basically go from India to Germany. I come back the other way. So I'm just putting myself in the shoes of Germans. Um, like he said about context. So we have around 35,000 engineers in India. Okay. And I think most of 20,000 plus develop a safety relevant systems. Just take an example as electric power steering, right? I mean, you write a code, you have to think about the impact that it does not block your steering or it does not steer in the other direction. Just imagine you're driving on the hill, you want to go left and then it gives a signal and you go on right and you fall and you die. So the question is, our guys sitting in Coimbatore, Bangalore, and now in Hyderabad, they never had a driving license and they don't know how it is manufactured. Right? Once they develop the software, they deploy the software, the vehicle tester tests it and says this is not shit is not working. So no, in my PC compiler, everything worked. So that's how the intent part, right? I mean the problem statement. So when we used to send people, so we used to say sit in the car with the vehicle tester, try to understand what does it really mean. And the second, go to the production plant and see how it manufactures. Because we write something and then there's a huge communication problem when you stack up the things. So this is intent. The other interesting part, GCCs, by the way, I heard this only when I came to India. So you know what we call low cost locations, LCLs. Yeah. So I felt offended when we were planning. Our management said, "Yeah, LCL, so much percentage we have to do in LCL." So I think low is such a low thing, right? I mean, I thought to put like I looked, I said best cost locations and etc. I said, I'm just you can do put whatever. For us, 1:4. So if we have to have one engineer here, so it's four engineers back in India. So that's why we are in India. So that's a very hard fact, by the way. Right now, of course, even now mobility, for example, it's in a challenging times. So they say value, right? I mean, now you have been also 25 plus years. You also know the domain. So now you bring the same value. Like you said, the engineer working from Hyderabad, is he or she different when working from New York or Germany? If they can uh, get the same value, they say we are also okay to say pay the same amount, but the value has to come, right? So
It's tough. Headquarters, see, typically in the top, they're aligned because they look at numbers, KPIs. When you see the challenge comes when you see the first level and second level managers. So when there is a planning, business planning done, they come back and say that, okay, we have now targets of our R&D budgets. Now our executive management wants to move, and from India we say we do everything. We do everything, right? We don't tell, uh, okay, we are good at this, and these are the skill sets which we need and handholding. We don't say that. So other side says India can't do anything, right? So it's very difficult.
Yeah, I've heard that many times.
Yeah. So it's very important for us to be more realistic because we used to give responsibilities back in India for the projects of German projects like Volkswagen, BMW, Audi. So everything when it goes, everything fine, everything is okay. But then when something falls back, then we say, okay, guys, now take over because we can't handle this. The safety net. So they say, please act as if you don't have a safety net. It means I have personally done it. I mean, when I came to Coimbatore, we transferred a project. We got an issue in one of the Japanese OEMs. So Japanese OEMs are big. I don't know who work with Japanese OEMs. So they talk to you about the problem, and 1 week they try to understand the problem, and then they say, okay, now we understood the problem. Two things. One, you tell us how many similar problems are available in the software. And the second, please come back to Japan. Now we want to talk face to face. The 7 days was only to understand the problem. I give a call back to headquarters. I say, oh, okay, we need to talk to experts. And in our mind, experts are from Germany who has developed the platform. So they say, no, Chip, we are not going to do that. We exactly told you the same. You cannot handle it. So let's not take the responsibility. But I fought for it. I took it. Then I had to go with my colleagues to Toyota, right, and then explain them one by one. It's so you have to take the ownership. It means when there are appreciations, take it. When there are slappings, also take it on the face. I mean, that's how it is. The responsibility and ownership.
That's it. My grandfather used to tell me a joke about Japanese. He was director of many national institutes on petroleum, and so he says once he gave a contract to a Japanese firm, and he told them that 1% error rate is okay for some components. So apparently they built 100 perfect components, and then one bad component, and then delivered it. With really of their quality and other stuff. But anyway, so in the interest of time, we'd like to pose some questions to the audience. Any questions from the audience?
Sorry, one just talking about talent, which I just wanted to tell. Um, so we have been fairly successful. We start Bosch Global Software Technology started somewhere in 1997 with 300 people. Today we are around 32,000. Four locations: India, Vietnam, Mexico. So the interesting part came, right? We say, what kind of people do we really require? Oh, we need with the right attitude. We need thinkers. Uh, then we just rewind. What did we do the last 25 years? So it was demand and supply. So we got requirements telling you have to hire this kind of people. We went universities, market, wherever we got those people, right fit, near fit, far fit, whatever you call. And then we trained. It worked. I mean, typically we always used to get 3 to 4 months. And now suddenly after AI, we say, no, this is everything. AI will do it. Now we need thinkers. So I think that, and we are also in a very difficult situation to understand and see how do we get these people, right? I mean, from outside, how do we develop these people within the organization? So the talent acquisition now is completely different, right? I mean, the demand and supply, I think demand will be still there, but a different set of people.
Anyone? Nilanjan will start with Nilanjan. Yeah.
Percentage of training is required because we are teaching something and we also have been guided what to teach by the government because you have all this educational system bodies saying that your curriculum should be like this. This is the credit hours for which you have to deliver the program, so on and so forth. So we also don't have that much flexibility as to change our curriculum to tailor-made it for people like you know. So my question is something my friend Amit was speaking at the beginning is once you hire, of course, you are going to see whether that person has that required cognitive skill. Like you rightly mentioned that if there is a little bit difference in the difference equation, rather than going left, the car can go right, because we also used to write all this code. But the question is, even in game, someone is driving right hand side, some part of the world is driving left hand side. So the cognitive skill matters, right? So how much of training is required? Let's say you hire people from some of best schools, right? How much more training is required in this phase where things are changing so rapidly? Do you have any idea to that? Or because you mentioned a very important word that thinker, AI itself is thinking, right? So where I draw that line and how much more training that needs to be going there for you get the right kind of map.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I'll try to answer maybe you add. So, typically what our experience has said, we take university people, and there are also differences. I mean, wherever we have certain people who have come in their final year with internship, understood our domain, a particular area. So they are exactly, they continue. The people who have not at all worked with us. So we start with typical fundamental basics, C, C++, and then give some sample tasks, so that they can work on a demonstrator or something like that. And maybe they are ready after 5 to 6 months. So, but with evolving things, so we are also thinking, so first attempt is how can we be a part with the academia itself, designing the curriculum. Because you can't design a whole curriculum only for Bosch. Not possible. Sector, a little bit of like mobility or, adjacent areas, aerospace, drone, maybe a similar technology. So can we co-design the curriculum and support faculty, students to spend some time in the industry during their breaks, internships. So it gives a good feel for them. And other side, once they are with us, so we frequently do this talent transformation based on what are the sunset skills. Sunset skills means in the next 3 to 4 years, which skills may not be there, right? With AI again coming in, which you may not, for example, coding, right? We are talking that you may not need code. So we may not need coders, right? Then we say, what are the sunrise skills, right? I mean, again, AI orchestrator, maybe AI coach, literally a practitioner who could do different level of tasks. So probably these are the new roles which are coming. So we try to design your training programs in a particular way. Um, so this really helps us. Uh, but again, timing it always depends. Which college, which person, under whose mentorship are you doing it? Maybe you can decide.
Simar, you had a
I
perspective.
see. No one is born with knowledge. Amjad had to learn on the job. Amit had to learn on the job. I had to learn on the job. So, yeah, knowledge, skill, attitude are the three key components. Knowledge is important. Skill is important, but both of them are taught. Attitude is the most important piece. As long as someone can challenge status quo, they have the learning agility, they have the curiosity to learn new, ask questions, and figure out. They will learn whatever. It's not a we are not building rockets for all practical purposes. Yes, we are doing transaction. He is building rockets, but within the banking side of the world, we are doing very, very, very simple, commonsensical things, and we need people who can ask questions about why the hell am I doing this? Why can a machine not do this? Why? And that is the skill that is required. Uh, Unfortunately, culturally, we are also trained in our education setup to not ask questions. Do what you're told. Just follow this. This is your curriculum. This is what you have to learn. Don't go left. Don't go right. the newer generation I see, at least at my home, is asking a lot more questions.
That's only with the parents, by the way.
So as long as they keep asking questions and they're willing to learn, I think the world is the best.
Last word to Amit so that we can close, please.
I think it's already been said that, and I'm a firm believer that you hire for attitude and you train for skills. So basically that's what it is. If the attitude is right and they have the basic understanding of the subject matter. So
Everything else will follow.
very, very good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. So Vansh, sorry, Vansh, last question to you, Vansh.
So Amjad sir touched up on the whole low cost location and the fact that talent will be retained if they feel they are part of more global impactful decisions. So my question is, Hyderabad's obviously already established itself as a hub for GCCs, but looking ahead, what do you think is one strong defining factor that will take it from a strong operational hub to like a truly global hub for leadership, decision making, innovation, etc.?
I think you yourself answered the question. I mean, you have to take the global roles, own the platforms, not just be part of this extended workbench. And by the way, the statement of telling Hyderabad is always now the leader, right? I mean, we need data to back up. Every second GCC is coming to Hyderabad, that is right. Bangalore also used to do in the past, right? So even to be there, I think it requires a lot of effort. Yeah. So I mean, taking global roles, owning the platforms. You work in the ecosystem. When I say ecosystem, it's again academia, government, startups, incubators. Industry bodies, GCCs, how they are working together and be a benchmark. So that keeps you on the top.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it was wonderful conversation. Big hand for this. Vice yes. Professor Divyapam is a senior professor. He was in the industry for about 30 years and then subsequently came to academia. He picked British. Now we welcome Rajesh Dudu. All of you, or many of you know Rajesh Dudu. He is both an outsider as well as an insider. And for those of you who are uninitiated, he's a partner at PwC and also, internal member of Mahindra family. So, Rajesh, I ask you to take over, please. Thank you. Thank you, Pradeep. May I request Richa, Vipin, and Swarupa to come onto the stage, please. So, yeah, please, Vipin, Swarupa, and Richa. So this is the toughest part, right? In terms of one, we are the last panel. Two, all the topics have been covered. Three, we are sitting between you and the lunch. So we have to really work hard to make this panel interesting, and you have to stay attentive to earn your lunch. If you're not attentive, lunch will not be served to you. Okay. See you, Amjad. Amjad, Okay, it's gone. So, in terms of, Bipin leads app in India, one of the good GCC, which is working in crowdsourcing the AI talent. Swarupa also leads a very large operation, and Richa is from Northern Tools. Swarupa is from Eastman. So, considering the fact that many of the topics have been covered by the previous panel, and still we have the tough job of delivering value on this panel. So I'll start with Bipin in terms of what are the things that you would like to share with the audience in terms of how GCCs can create that global impact sitting here in India. You can use this, Vipin. Maybe that's not working. Uh, yeah, so
Yeah, yeah. Just a couple of perspectives, right? So there's always this uh, whole euphoria about value, innovation, etc., and all that stuff. Right? And frankly speaking, my personal opinion is that it's a center of excellence, value creation. All of this is absolutely highly romanticized beyond what is the normal. The reality is that even today and even tomorrow and the day after tomorrow also, if you look at the top Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 1000 companies, every single company, does not matter whether they're doing a $1 trillion business or $1 million business. The reality is that you have to execute, you have to serve your customer. If the customer does not exist, you will die down tomorrow morning. Yep. So therefore, saying that I don't want to do execution, I want to kind of focus on innovation is an absolutely naive and a very foolish concept. And second part, as a leader, been in the industry for quite some years, I can tell you that if let us say 95 out of my 100 employees said we want to be innovators, I know that I'm dead tomorrow morning. No organization can afford to have everybody talking about innovation. Right? And if you want to learn about innovation, what it means, please read anybody, whether Richard Eckhoff, Blake Christensen, or even Dr. Prahlad, right? Innovation happens in a structured fashion. A lot of people have this notion that innovation means free for all. Absolutely not. Right? The best innovating companies are the ones where there's structure in place. So the reality is that we have to look at what is it we look for. We want to look at it. The second aspect, is talking about is India going to be global hub? Is GCC the whole next thing? Is AI going to kill everybody? I think a lot of time people miss the data. And I was on just about earlier this week, I was talking on a different panel, and the whole topic was that AI is going to kind of create unemployment, India is going to go into the dogs. I had to just very politely tell them, gentlemen and ladies, do you know what is the Indian IT industry's contribution to our GDP? 300 million out of 4 trillion. If there's unemployment in the IT industry, how can the country go to dogs? Doesn't work that way, right? So always please look at the data points, right? It's very, very important. Are we talking about GCCs, GVCs? Are we doing a lot of adding value to the global industry? The answer is absolutely yes. But to say that we want to be at the top of the food chain without earning a place to be is also not right. So there are few levers that I always kind of look at it, and then that's what I will tell colleagues when they ask about it. The most important lever to understand where am I in the food chain when I'm leading a GCC is that am I part of the problem discussion and the solution visualization? Or am I just part of solution implementation? That's a very clear distinction to understand where do I stand? What is my value as a leader and as a GCC in my corporate world? If I'm being asked to implement a solution, which means I have not earned my place. If I'm part of problem discussion and the solution visualization, then I've already quote unquote part of the global team. That's one lever I always use. The second lever I always say is that it's not about me saying that I'm doing a phenomenal job from India and our GCC is just awesome, etc. I can say whatever I want to say. These days, the reality is that even your spouse and children don't agree when you praise yourself. That's the reality of the modern world. The defining factor for me is that is my CEO recognizing that a solution or a product or a feature or something is actually delivered out of India GCC. When my CEO acknowledges in a global town hall what was delivered, not the typical, oh, India is doing a great job. No. Very specifically, this product is happening. And that's because India team worked on it. That's the second lever I used, right? The third lever I use in terms of understanding where we stand at GCC's ecosystem is that um, how do we create a sense of accountability and ownership? And I think, Amit and Amzad were talking in the previous panel, a lot of time, the context is very, very difficult. When you're sitting in India, it's not just having the talent and the skills, but if I do not understand the customer problem, if I do not relate to the customer, it's very difficult to get the job done right. So therefore, that's a context setting, and therefore the understanding for the people in India team to be able to relate with who are your customers, what are your colleagues doing elsewhere in the world, and therefore, if I have to grow up the value chain to take on accountability, right? How do I do that? Because it's not about asking for accountability. It is about being given the accountability. And accountability, a simple logic I always use is what my grandfather and my father taught me, which is I can demand respect, but nobody will give me. I should earn my respect. Same is the case for GCCs. You have to earn your credibility. When you earn the credibility, global roles will come. And the way to earn credibility is that taking ownership and being accountable for what you committed.
Thank you, Bipin. That's very interesting. So value is the key word. That's the operating word. And in terms of you have to earn the recognition, you should not be able. I mean, you'll not be able to demand the recognition. So when I was working for Raman Roy, who is known as the father of Indian BPO industry, Raman always used to go and say, "Give your mess, and we will do it for less." Like that was the equation we always used to use, and over a period of time, we had to coach Raman not to say that. Because that, while that actually triggered the birth of the GCC industry, it's more about value. That's why we also re-architected this term called business process outsourcing to business process management. When I was in Spectrum Mind, he used to say, "You're mess for less." And then subsequently, we said it's not process outsourcing, it's process management. So moving on, Swarupa, how do you see this narrative developing at Eastman in terms of how does the center in India fits into the overall scheme of things from a global perspective, and how do you architect value?
Wait, am I audible? Okay, it's loud enough. So I think, as Bipin has said, every GCC or GCC, I mean, is a capability center that we are really talking about, but cost arbitrage, we have moved through the journey. But still, operational excellence is one of the important things, right? I have worked in fintech for years. Entire my career was in fintech. And moved to manufacturing, a total different perspective on how things run because we don't really have, I mean, as Amjad was talking, very few organizations have manufacturing set up in India, but most of them are outside of India, right? So, how do we really connect or anchor to the global strategy is very, very important, right? So, you are really talking about your narrative. How are you presenting your narrative? And what is your talent capability that we are talking about? Right? What kind of unique skills that you can bring onto the table? And I think you said you give anything and we can work for less. I think it holds true to some extent here. Because if you're talking about in job, it is 4:1. But if you're talking about AI and other capabilities, could be it is 2:1. Right? So I think we still have a kind of an advantage. But I think how we are scaling the capabilities is very, very important. And the most important one is the narrative. And I keep saying this, right? So it used to be, I joined 3 years back. If you really look at 3 years back, it was more for operations. It is today also it is called as Hyderabad Operations Center, which I'm not liking it. Where we are working through that. But the point is that when you have that, the whole context of the leadership is that, oh, I have an operations center that I can go and give that kind of work. But no, it is a capability center when we're scaling up. And in 3 years, we have changed the to some extent. I would not say I still desire to go ahead with a lot of things, but we now have the global M&A team, mergers and acquisition team driven from Hyderabad. It's a huge thing, right? From an IT perspective. And we are also looking at the entire S4 HANA migration to be driven from Hyderabad. Right. So I think those are the things that we really have to scale up. And it is a transition from an operational excellence to the value journey is what is my opinion.
Wonderful. That's good to know that what we are actually talking about is being implemented at the respective GCs. So moving to Richa, we've been sitting. Uh, next to each other and we are discussing a few things. In terms of if you look at the journey of these GCCs, earlier it was called as Global In-House Center. Now we are talking about Global Capability Center. But on this panel, the operating word is value. So our honorable IT minister that also rechristened GCCs, he said those are not GCCs. In fact, those are global value creation centers. So, Richa, what's your take on that? And what I heard is by virtue of having a few conversations, and we at PwC has also analyzed about 150 GCCs by talking to people here as well as their counterparts over there. And one thing that has come out very, very clearly is what is the strategic alignment between people here and people who are there on onshore. It will be good to hear your perspectives.
Yeah, so very loaded question. And I must sort of talk a little bit about how this evolution has happened, right? So it is also about the businesses, organization, business that we are into, and the kind of problems that business problems that are needed to be solved today by the organizations has evolved over the period of time, right? The cycle of change has become much more rapid as compared to what it used to be. The overall cycle time has reduced significantly, right? And during this period, while the businesses in US and UK were going through all of these changes, what India talent ecosystem was doing is also was evolving, right? And our talent density has actually helped us in moving beyond the execution goals. And credit goes to everybody who has come in and set up their centers in India. And of course, we never used to call them GCCs at that point of time. Today, also, to somebody was mentioning that we never call ourselves GCC. I think Amit was talking about it. We don't call ourselves GCCs in our parent organizations. So, I sort of have seen this shift on my own organization as well. However, because we were a late arriver in the world of GCC in India, we had the advantage of learning from some of the GCCs who had come in first.
Right.
So right at the get-go, we instead of setting ourselves as a delivery center, we positioned ourselves as a headquarters too in the organization. Now, you can call whatever you want to call yourself, but what does it mean in terms of the kind of work that happens in the organization? What kind of strategic alignment you have? Are you part of the decision making or you are being told what needs to be done, right? Whether you are being able to provide that outside lens because you're sitting in a third country from the headquarters, and you have visibility of larger ecosystem, which usually is not so widely available in the our headquarters wherever we are. So, are you able to utilize some of those core strategic advantage that you can bring to the organization, be it in terms of the kind of talent, and of course, cost will never go away. The kind of cost advantage that you can provide as well as that outside perspective of learning from your competitor, learning from the industry. Are you able to feed that back into the organization and hence gain your seat at the table?
So you're basically talking about in terms of are you an order creator or you're an order taker?
Yeah.
You should move on the scale to move away from order taker to an order creator kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you should always see when what's your proximity to the strategic decision? What is the proximity of your teams to the strategic decisions? Are you being told when the decision is made, or are you being core part of the team which is making the decisions?
And see, in terms of while a lot of forward momentum has happened, the perception has changed. Recently, I spent about a day with the global leadership of one of the pharma company, which is one of the first movers into the GCC. I went prepared, looking at all the economic metrics, talent capability, and all that stuff. And this guy, who is a very, very senior guy who sits in Switzerland, he asked me a very startling question. The question was, when was the last power cut you had in Hyderabad? Right? While we prepared for what is the art of possibility? Ultimately, it's the perception that matters. And also, what I've seen is in my experience, if there's an Indian at the helm at the global headquarters, you tend to get things a lot more easier compared to a non-Indian at the helm. So we're still operating at that perception layer where we have to contribute a lot, right? And also in terms of while the operations are creating a good value, ultimately from a overall quantum, if you see, I wouldn't use the term flash in the pan, but it is still not significant. So, given that, what is your take to the leadership or students who would get into GCC workforce at a later point of time? What are the things that they need to focus on? No specific order.
Just one quick interjection.
Yes,
Just one kind of pick on the thought. We said order takers or order givers, right?
right.
I think that's again. I just want to dwell so because there are a lot few of the students out here. I don't want them to get wrong. The reality is that the whole concept of order taking or order giving, I think is a wrong concept.
Okay.
And they're unnecessarily romanticizing it. I'll take a couple of examples. Sure. Let's look at probably the most respected Indian conglomerate, Tata Group.
Right.
Does Tata still MD take orders from Tata Trust Chairman? Answer.
Yeah.
Let's look at Infosys, TCS, whatever.
Right.
How can everybody become an order giver? It just insane, right?
Right.
So the whole concept of I think it should not be who is order taker was order giver. The concept should be what is the outcome we want to deliver to us? Why is my customer paying? Right. If there's outcome, it doesn't matter whether it's and then you're a team. So whether your title is X or somebody else says Y or whatever, so it doesn't matter. When the outcome is defined,
Right.
when the timeline is defined, and you know that you're on the team. In fact, many years back, one of my leader, theater conference, with a part of Broadcom, he used to have this famous dialogue. So he used to say, guys, the strategy is decided, the plan is in place. Please get on the bus. Right? Please do not act like typical Indian Hyderabad is standing on the footboard. Either you're on inside the bus or off the bus. I don't want anybody in the footboard. And of course, the next section I learned from him, great leader. So now I kind of use it to the next section, which is I say, don't just get on the bus, but also figure out which seat are you best suited for. I can't have everybody sitting in the driver's seat. There can be only one driver per bus. So it's also important to understand the aspiration angle should never undermine the outcome requirements for the success of the company. Sorry for the interjection. I don't
In terms of that's a welcome change. In terms of you're basically saying it's like an orchestra. You decide which instrument you want to play and create music, not cacophony. Right. Wonderful.
And I think to Bipin's point, it is more of a co-creation, right? I think it is not order taker or order giver. I think we have passed that situation. It is more of a co-creation based on the competencies that we have, based on the strategy that we can anchor on. I think it all depends upon based on the strategy, how are we actually plugging on is very important. So co-creation is the right word for us, rather than just talking about the order creation and order taking, because it's all again situational, right? Like as someone was talking in the previous panel, right? If there's something which is a business fundraising, right? Do we have the best of the capability here? We may be handicapped to really get into that. Yes, we have the global roles, but someone who is sitting with the customer is defining what we need to do, right? So in that situation, it could be that the person is trying to get as a strategy, then you're working to the strategy. So there's no longer that kind of a version. I agree strongly with Bipin on that. But that's where I think essentially, if you are as students, if you're anchoring for future, I think we should get out of the notion, and it is more of a co-creation that we're really talking about. And a few things on because we are talking in the college, I thought I'll just talk about it on what is the future ready skills, right? So technology is growing dramatically, right? So it was 10 years kind of an evolution. Now it is starting 5 years, probably it could be 2 to 3 years. The technology is rapidly changing. AI is disrupting the entire ecosystem. What stays as strong is the kind of competencies and the attitude that we build on agility, resilience, adaptability, and really ability to be courageous to challenge the status quo. Because we're seeing that kind of traits coming in from the college. I mean, college students. And recently, we're working with some interns, and they were really working on some solution. To our surprise, in 4 months' time, the interns really have put in a wonderful solution because they really have questions asked us the questions which we were not asking earlier, right? Because they're not having the perspective. They are coming out fresh. They're not having any baggage from the previous thing. So I think that kind of a fresh thinking is obviously something that we are looking forward. And yes, parents are asked a lot of questions, but I think in the corporates also, you guys are asking a lot of questions. So really keep up the spark of being courageous to ask the questions and challenge the ecosystem.
Thank you, Sharif. The fact that you mentioned that your global M&A team operates out of Hyderabad is a good validation of the co-creation as far as your GCC is concerned. Teja, in terms of, does this actually change from the nature of the industry and the and also the the tenure of the company which is there? Because I've seen in terms of, in some conservative areas, they tend to be very traditional in terms of thinking, but in terms of industries where they're kind of born digital, or maybe at least not born complete brick and mortar, maybe a hybrid of brick and mortar and digital, the perspective tends to change. What's your take? You come from the
Traditional.
traditional
Yes.
tools,
Tools and equipment.
the tools, equipment. I saw your GCC can fix a lot of things for your parent.
Yeah, I agree, right? I would say that while we talk about the shift from cost arbitrage to value creation, not all organizations are moving in that direction, or some of the organization does not want to move in that direction intentionally so, because the kind of outcomes that has been designed or decided. Second is, even in our own GCCs, not every function is moving in that direction, right? So you can have certain functions which are focused on running the show, which are focused on keeping the lights on. And those are your operational functions, which are equally important for the organization as much as the teams which are like, because of being the not tools and equipment company, we also have product engineering teams, new product development teams, which sits out of India. Their mandate is absolutely about high-end value creation, launching new products, filing for IPs, versus some of my APAR teams. So not every team needs to move up in the sense of I will not do execution, now I will only do value creation work. But within your scope of work, what value you can bring in for the organization? The value can be in terms of launching a new product versus it can be how can I do the same work in a better and more efficient way is also something that we need to think about. And I just want to sort of add to some of the last question that you had asked around message for the students. I would say that if you leave from the college in whichever domain and a course that you're pursuing, just learning about that course, uh, it is not enough in today's world. So it is very important that you first understand, of course, you develop your deep domain expertise in whatever course that you're pursuing, but also learn about adjacent industries and the domains in which some of your core technical skills that you're developing will be applicable. And then to Swarupa's point, some of these horizontal foundational skills, be curious, logical reasoning, critical thinking, be able to have the judgment of what output that a tool like AI or any kind of automation is providing to me, how it can be better, what is the outcome that I need. So being able to have that judgment is also some of the skills that I believe are equally important as much as your specific domain or technical skills.
You're basically saying it's a combination of core subject matter as well as the horizontal skills. This is one question which I did not discuss with the panel members, so maybe I'm putting you on spot. So just bear with me. A lot has been accomplished in the GCC industry, right? And it is becoming the national narrative. It's also become very glamorous. It's glamorous to have a role in the GCC these days and stuff like that. A lot has been accomplished, but if you have to touch upon one thing which is yet to be accomplished, what will that one thing will be, and how would you like that to be changed? Good.
So I will not talk just from GCC perspective. I would like to step away a little bit, right? So if you look at the economic powerhouses geographically today, the economic powerhouses are the ones which own the IP. I mean, not from patent point of view, but own IP in the sense you own the product, right? Right. So, but GCs are great because we are a very large population, the job creators. But the reality is for India to kind of get to the next level in terms of the economic, becoming economic powerhouse and creating long-term citizen value, we need to transition from the whole idea of serving and adding GDP versus how do we kind of own something where the world will pay for it. Today we are probably, except for a very very few examples, maybe like a petrochemicals like Reliance and the ONGC and probably some automobiles like Tata's and Mahindra and Suzuki and Honda. We really do not have examples. In fact, including the life science segment, which is something which the whole country is very proud of. Yeah. The reality is that we are still an intermediary player. There is still no patented drugs that are manufactured and designed, developed. Same with the products of the country. Right. So I know multiple software IT companies in the past have tried the product angle, but for whatever reason, economic reasons, the strategic reasons, or the customer acceptance reasons, we have not gone with. That is one area where I think, unlike the multiple technological disruptions the world has seen, the current disruption that we're looking at in terms of the AI, the possibility for us to leapfrog is very, very. I mean, the simple example we can always look at is that even today, US, UK, and European countries are struggling when it comes to mobile penetration. India had that huge luxury because they never had landlines. Yeah. When you so there was no person undoing anything, right? We leapfrog. So similarly, the barriers of moving towards a product-led economy, I think, is now going to be shrunk very, very large. So I think it's less about the GCC perspective. And in fact, from that point of view, though I've been in GCC for quite some time, I can say the whole GCC paradigm of pushing for the GCCs the government is doing right now, good from a current for today, it does not serve for tomorrow. If you want to kind of grow the country tomorrow, you have to have indigenous India-based product-oriented economy. We're all part of GCCs, very happy, we get paid very handsomely, having a luxurious life, but that's not for tomorrow's India.
Yeah, well, fully agree. In fact, I was reading an article where recently CS has hosted one of the famous scientists in the world. I failed to recall the name of the person. And when they asked him in terms of what is that one advice that you would like to give to the country, he said, you are very excellent in using a technology, but you're not good at creating a technology. So can you shift the focus from using the technology to creating the technology, except for, the vaccine, apart from Covaxin? Nothing, yeah, nothing much has been done, right? Sorry.
So I think probably I'll not touch on the ecosystem part, but education system. Probably that is something it has to be anchored very strategically because we have year on year 300 to 400,000 students coming out into the ecosystem, but the quality of the students, right? It really varies, right? Like we're in the IITs and top institute, the quality of the education is very, very high because they are plugging into this corporates very early on. Right? The curriculum is defined based on what the corporates need and in the competencies, the horizontal skills that we spoke about is very well plugged down to that, right? But if you look at the rest of the 90% of the graduates coming into the ecosystem, right? Um, it is a big question on how quickly we can onboard them and what kind of a ramp up that we can get on. So I think in my view, I think this is my personal view, is as GCCs, as a government, we still have a lot of room to play on how can we really relook at education system and how we can anchor the education institutions into the corporates because they will understand that right from the basic one, right? So they're not waiting for the tail end to really see that, okay, what is the organization's looking for and trying to upgrade on the skills, but very beginning, they know we are looking at this as, and we said, like, if you're really looking for startups, do we have an ecosystem to thrive? Is also a question because people maybe the students have come with a lot of ideas, but is there a support system in today to really encourage that is also a question. Thankfully, we have a biggest startup hub in Hyderabad, but still we look at it just started and now I think it is getting on to a kind of a plateau. So I think that's where it is very important. One, do we have an ecosystem that we can thrive for? And how are we anchoring the education system for the future skills?
Absolutely. I think some of it in terms of we have to rekindle that pride in education, right? I remember my father's name board was never complete without his education qualifications. His name board had BSc, MSc, and PhD. Until and unless it was mentioned on that particular name board, it was never ever considered to be complete. And somewhere we have lost that pride in that education, I guess, and also in terms of rekindling the ecosystems. Thank you, Richard.
So again, I'm at the disadvantage of speaking last.
We'll take a topic where you can go first.
I did speak first, but I would probably talk a little bit about what we can do as families, right? Education has been spoken about, industry has been spoken about. And some of the points that were mentioned in the earlier panel is somehow as a culture, we are not encouraged to have meaningful conversation, challenge the status quo, and ask right questions, right? It's not part of our culture. And that shift is very much required, especially in the current pace at which overall, forget about GCCs, the world economy, macroeconomic scenarios, industry, technology, the kind of rapid change which is coming in. It is extremely important that our younger generation has those skills of being able to have meaningful conversation, engage with the people cross geographies, and ask meaningful questions. Oftentimes, we as leaders see that while back in our headquarters or in developed countries, even junior most employees are so very comfortable in challenging, asking questions. But some of our even manager level employees do not feel very comfortable uh, asking questions. So I think that is a societal shift that I would say is yet to be seen.
I'm reminded of a good incident which actually spawned the growth of GCCs in this country, asking meaningful questions. So I was working with this guy, Raman. He had set up the back office for General Electric. And then he was pushing his bosses to deliver voice work. And they were always saying no, no to the voice work because when he asked why, they said, no, the quality of line is not good. And these were the days when you could have been arrested for keeping a dish antenna outside your office, right? That was the licensing Raj. So one day he said, no, I have to convince these guys. And then he called up his boss. He called the secretary, and the secretary forgot to put the call on hold, I mean mute. And the secretary tells, this call is there from Raman. And the boss goes, this son of a gun, he is again back at me again. And then, okay, he tells the secretary, okay, connect the line. And Raman says, I'm in town unannounced and I want to come and meet you and let's catch up for dinner. And this guy says, oh, the voice quality is absolutely amazing. Where would you like to have dinner? Then he says, please approve my travel ticket to US so that I can come to have dinner with you. And that's when the boss said, wow, it's approved in GE. And that's how they went on to do the voice delivery work from India. So a lot has happened in this industry. A lot of people have contributed, and you guys are carrying that baton forward within Swarupa and Richa. It also gives a good segue. I can see people thinking of food, but before we get to the food, maybe open the floor for one or two questions. I can see some students waiting to ask the questions, and after that, we can bring this to an end.
Absolutely, yes. Because see, the economies which thrive very fast, the economies accelerate when the consumer spending increases, right? I mean, even goes back to the Keynesian theory of John Maynard Keynes Nobel Prize, correct? So that's the reality of life. And today, I think India has moved away from the paradigm of the total, saving mindset. If I look at my elder son who's just started to work, they don't have the concept of saving. So they've started to kind of look at more consumption economy. I think India is slowly moved. The moment we are making a transition from a
towards the consumption economy, the opportunities will become galore, right? The area where, for example, drug discovery for long has been very capex intensive, right? For a drug to start from molecule identification towards going through all of the clinical trials and FDA approved, we're talking maybe like $1 billion investment. And that's where they're always priced very high. But today with AI, LLMs, and even the computational power that's coming in over a period of time, the possibility of shrinking the timelines, shrinking the budgets is very high. Therefore, is there an opportunity for some of the Indian companies to kind of use their massive domain knowledge where they kind of re-engineer the patents for like 40 years in the whole API markets and everything else? Can they redo it? The answer is absolutely yes, number one. Number two, we are today a very large middle class. Consumption patterns are increasing. So why does India as a country need to import ton of stuff? Right? I'll give you an example. During COVID time frame, it's it's a sad example, unfortunately, from my point of view. During COVID, there's a phenomenal challenge of importing oxygen concentrators, importing ventilators. Massive problem. The whole world was struggling, right? We didn't have enough. There's researchers and it's now become a private limited company on IIT Hyderabad, which actually created a mechanical ventilator. And I was talking to Professor Malareddy just a month ago, and it's so sad that it's just they're still there, but they're just not able to move forward because the whole dynamic of COVID happened, the whole government was interested, state government, everybody started talking about the COVID went down. Now you just want to kind of play and say, oh, I still want to kind of the Dutch company, the German company, the US company, Australia company. So that is an area where the consumption is increasing, but the Indian mindset, which is including me, by no means am I saying outside, right? We need to start trusting our products. We need to start trusting to pay value to a product which is built in India. That I think those two dimensions will actually the mindset change and the opportunities wise. Certainly, whether it's talk automobiles, phones, right? We talk about mobile phones today. Bottom line, it's what I call a screwdriver technology. Where is a single mobile phone which is actually designed and manufactured in India? Nothing. Everything is knocked down kits. So we need to move that. Semiconductor is a foray that the Indian government is looking at it. But personally, I'm not sure if that's an area where we can go to as a country because semiconductor is unbelievably water intensive. And as a country, we just do not have fresh water. We're struggling for people to drink and people to kind of just do the natural thing. So the whole push on semiconductor industry, in my personal opinion, is a little suspect. But a lot of we're talking about medical, healthcare, the opportunities that where we can leapfrog and become a production economy versus in tandem with the consumption economy, I think it's very. I'm phenomenally hopeful. I'm sure my next generation are in for a bonanza.
Just wanted to add one point to Bipin's point there is basically, I think there's an opportunity in manufacturing. Absolutely, yes. Especially in the circular economy, when I'm coming from manufacturing organization, there's a huge opportunity for us in how we can create a circular economy, right? In the budget session also, Nirmala Sitharaman said that we have all those tourist spots we dumped out of the plastics, right? So what can we really do about creating sustainable ecosystem is something that we have to focus on. So, in my view, when we are looking at the responsible manufacturing organizations, like what can we do to really eliminate the waste from the system that we are creating in humps, right? So, that would be a huge opportunity again, given the scale that we have here.
Any other question? One question. Yes, please.
So you just made a statement about how the consumption is being shifted in India. And for the longest time, India has been called the GCC capital of the world. So was it because of the way we previously spent it or the way we previously consumed that is having a saving economy or like having a more conservative economy compared to now? Was it because of that? And what would be the changes that we would see in the coming future?
This is two disparate topics, completely disparate, right? The savings pattern versus consumption patterns that are changing has no correlation with GCCs, right? The bottom line is that we're talking about GCCs as a new way because a lot of companies coming in today. So the reality is that if you look at it,
I think the very first quote unquote IT company that came to India is 1974, X Instruments, the very first company. And Coke has been in India for a long time. GE has been in India for a long time. Bosch has been in India for multiple years. So the concept of GCC is about somebody in India working for your parent. That's a very rudimentary, simplistic time. The GCs are going off like fundamentally because if you go back and look at the business 101, the business 101 is very simple. Source at the cheapest location, sell it where you get the highest price point. There's nothing beyond business. That is the fundamental philosophy. Right? So therefore, for a lot of years, people have been looking at sourcing. I mean, look at it. Why did colonization happen? Until 1628, India and China together had 55% global economy. If you go back to first century AD, right, India was about 43% of the global GDP. Why did it change? The whole colonization didn't happen. Because they enjoyed kind of, say, seafaring. They came to India, they came to China primarily because of resource materials. Then they stayed because they were selling into us. Okay? So GCCs came to India primarily because of talent. India is the only country, is the only country where somebody can make a statement saying that I'm coming to India to set up a site and I'm going to hire maybe 2,000 people in the next 12 months, maybe 10,000 people in the next 16 months, maybe 5 years. No other country in the world has the talent capacity that can actually allow you to plan that way. Right? So that uniqueness about having the right engineering talent with the strong mathematical foundations is what has really kind of brought in the wave of GCCs. The good thing is that now the GCCs were initially all tech companies, so to say. Now we are seeing a very large diversification, where we're still calling GCCs. The first was tech, then the banking. Now we're actually seeing a lot of life sciences. We're looking at manufacturing. So other segments, the what I would call the Fortune 3000, Fortune 4000, Fortune 5000, which we're very happy to stay in Pennsylvania versus Nebraska versus maybe Berlin versus maybe Oslo, are now saying, hey, I'm only $100 million company, but if a $100 billion company is getting leverage of going to India, at $100 million company, why am I not going to India? So the wave is continuing because it's becoming more democratized, more diversified. So that is the whole Jesus wave. The second part I was talking about, the whole pattern of savings to consumption change and the trust in Indian product, would actually help not GCC's point of view at all. It will just help the country to move forward and become an economic powerhouse, which we were 400 years back.
Thank you, Bipin. In fact, in one of my previous offices, we had a notice board which said trespasser will be recruited. Absolutely. On that note, we'll bring this to an end. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. Really? I projected off. How do I do that? Okay. This is computer. Once more, is it? Yeah, there it goes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bipin, Swarupa, and Richard. Sure.